It's time! We're doing a deep dive on ONYX Storm! Who's ready to get elbows deep in the nonsense? Hi, my name's Rachel, and today this is ONYX Storm Deep Dive Part 1, talking about ONYX Storm, which is the next book in the Fourth Wing series, also known as the Imperium Cycle series, even though the Imperium is barely paid lip service to. What's that about? Doesn't make any sense to me. In today's deep dive, we are going to talk about Part 1, and I'm going to point out how the first third of this book, this is going to be in 3 parts, just like the last ones. First third of this book was doing better, actually. This would prove later to not be the case, but the first little chunk of this was doing better than the last 2 books. Initially, there was an active effort that was obviously made to explain some basic lore. So we did get some answers to questions that I've been asking in books 1 and 2, which is great. Unfortunately, as this went on, it created more logical holes. And a big problem is that now, because this series is going on so long and really doesn't have a lot going on, we are repeating a ton of mistakes and repeating the same scenes over and over and over again. And it's not just the spicy scenes, we're repeating a lot of stuff, which is a problem that this series has had since book 1. I think this is why we are seeing that fans of this series who liked books 1 and 2, particularly book 1, are now dropping off after having read ONYX Storm. Repetition of scenes beat for beat is what makes for a deeply unenjoyable story. But repetition is how you learn a new language, which is how I've been learning Portuguese through today's sponsor, which is Babbel. Babbel is one of the top language learning apps in the world, and it has lessons using real-life conversations that are scientifically proven to help you start learning a language in just 3 weeks. Babbel's lessons are created by over 650 real language learning experts. These were lessons that specifically were designed to help you learning practical real-world conversations. I think we've all seen that Babbel has certainly helped me in screaming about terrible books to my friends in 2 languages. But it taught me that not just by teaching me words, but by sentence structure. It's taught me irregular verbs, things that I struggle with in English. So right now I'm in Unit 8, and I'm learning about how to talk about clothing, like, do you have this in another size? And these shoes are too tight. I'm working on my recap right now.
Esses brincos são demais. Por que você não compra eles?
Demais. Yay!
Os sapatos cabem direitinho.
Direitinho. Oh, let's see if I remember how to spell.
Você tem essa calça em preto, tamanho 42?
Tamanho has an H in it. Yes. Size 42. Asaya, the skirt is a little apertada. I've been able to talk in comments with commenters in Portuguese, yell to my best friend Lou about terrible books in Portuguese, and that's because Babbel is designed to teach you a new language in a practical way that prepares you to have real-world conversations, everything from personal life to business to talking to your friends about terrible media. So what language are you hoping to learn in 2025? Whether it's Portuguese or Turkish or Indonesian or Spanish, you can get 60% off your subscription by clicking the link below or by using the QR code. Get yourself started today ranting about books in 2 languages. Click that link down below to get started, and thank you so much to Babbel for sponsoring today's video. In the last book, Iron Flame, which didn't feel like it needed to be its own book despite being 640 pages, we get to spend more time with Promish, which is the Griffin riding country that we're for some reason at war with, including Xaden's ex, which I'm still wondering how they spent any time together. We also get to spend time with Violet's brother, who was presumed dead, who was actually running the rebellion. And also, we're repeating the spicy scenes, which I have laid out in great detail, which we're going to get in depth with one today, but unfortunately I do have to censor myself because otherwise my videos get reported and then YouTube gets mad at me and won't tell me how to fix it. Anyways, but now we're also dealing with the Venin, who the the Navarre Empire, Violet's country, have been lying about the existence of the Venin to everyone who's not inside the government's inner circle, I guess. Why were they lying about the Venin when the Venin posed such a deep threat? Who knows? What did they really get out of lying to their people about this threat? I don't know. They team up with Promish, who they've been fighting in a war against, to fight the Venin now, when they could have been doing that all along, only for Xaden himself to channel from the earth and thus become a Venin. So immediately upon finish, I knew that the repetition issue was going to be back in at least one capacity, which would be that Violet and Xaden will have the same fight for 600 pages. In the previous book, the fight that they would have regularly, especially before they get their freak on, is can Violet trust Xaden Xaden. So as soon as he was revealed to have become Venin and it ended the book where we know that Xaden is a Venin, I knew that this book, Onyx Storm, the entirety of it was going to be, can Xaden trust himself? And I was correct. So that's where we left off in Iron Flame. Xaden is a Venin and will slowly turn because there is no cure. We also revealed that Andarna is a rainbow dragon, and at least on the continent where we are centered, there are other countries outside of the continent, which we will travel to now, finally. On the continent, she is the only dragon of her kind, the only rainbow dragon, which in the book they are called Irids. A lot of this book, particularly in the first third, is Basgaeth, the War College, as well as the government of Navarre, the council, making plans to send Violet and company to go track down the other rainbow dragons, which for some reason Andarna voices very little opinion on in the first third, despite it all being about, her. Instead, we make it about her dragon rider, Violet. So let's get into it. Onyx Storm. As usual, we start with a preview, which I don't know that I've ever seen this in another book. Well, maybe. I don't know that I've ever seen this in another traditionally published book. I'm saying I don't know. I'm not saying it's not done. I don't really know why it's here is my point. Onyx Storm is a non-stop thrilling adventure fantasy set in the brutal and competitive world of a military college for dragon riders, which includes elements regarding war, hand-to-hand combat, blood, intense violence, brutal injuries, gore, murder, death, animal death, injury, rehabilitation, grief, poisoning, burning, perilous situations, graphic language, and sexual activities that are shown on the page. Readers who may be sensitive to these elements, please take note and prepare to face the storm. So I guess this has been all along this series version of a trigger warning notice. I just don't know why you need to state what kind of book it is beforehand. I've never seen that before. I don't know. I'm not really sure why we do that. I do think it's interesting though that I did that entire video where I talked about, is this book just dragons and, I have to censor from now on, so dragons and wink wink eggplant, when it states right up front in every single book, this book is a non-stop thrilling adventure fantasy set in the brutal and competitive world of a military college for dragon riders. We then get this page where it's telling you who's who, which is helpful. I don't think this was in the other books because, to be honest, I could not remember any of these people because they have not been differentiated in any way that really sunk in for me personally. That might be different for you. That's fine. I definitely did not remember anybody's dragon's name. So if all of a sudden Violet's dragon and Darna was having a conversation with Molvik, I would not know who the that was. Similarly with the griffins, I don't remember whose griffin is who. I definitely don't remember the name of Violet's mom's dragon, and as we know, Violet's mom died at the end of Iron Flame. There is no word to what happened with her, at least in the first third of this. I don't know if she's going to rebond at any point. I don't know anything about Violet's mother's dragon. It's not mentioned, which is weird. You would think that would come up, that Tarn would say, oh, whatever the fucking dragon's name is morning. We get a map of the continent, but as I said, we are going to be moving outside of the continent in this book, but not in this first third. Once again, we get another excerpt that says, the following text has been faithfully transcribed from Navarian in the modern language by Jacinia Nilewort, the only good character in this book, in my opinion. But of course, this does beg the question, is Jacinia then at fault for all of these spicy scenes being the same scene over and over? Did she just not want to write those out over and over? Who's to say? Not the book. We get a prologue that begins with, where in Malik's name is he going? This is Violet following Xaden, and it was at that moment that I knew that once again, I was right, and they are going to have a communication issue because of lack of emotional maturity. Why didn't he tell me he was doing this and that? He doesn't trust me. No, I don't trust myself. I knew from prologue page 1 that I was right. If it wasn't for our dragon's bond leading me in the general direction and the sporadic disappearance of mage lights, I'd never think that he's masked somewhere ahead of me, so she can't sense where he is because he's masking himself. And she's worried because if anyone spots the faint strawberry red circles around his eyes, Iris says, he'll be arrested and likely executed. According to the texts I've read, they'll fade at this phase, but until they do, what could possibly be important enough for him to risk being seen? So he's getting red rings around his eyes because he channeled from the earth, which makes him Venin. At this point, I'm wondering, okay, how do they fade exactly? What other things pop up? But That's okay, because we are in the beginning of the book. There is time to answer such questions. I'm just saying that logically, these are the questions that start to pop up when you're reading a book that has yet to establish that lore previously. This is a good book, a good part of the series to establish such lore. All right, so she's navigating Basgiath. She's following Xaden. Xaden bypasses some guards or somebody. Violet can't bypass them, and she runs into them, and they say, "May your mother be remembered, to General Sorengale, the Flame of Basgiath." One of the third years calls out. And I'm like, I just thought that there would be some repercussions at this point for leadership having lied to its people about the Venin, and basically having tied one hand behind the back of all of its people and caused the dragon riders' dragons to have lied to them. So I'm surprised that General Sorengale is remembered as a hero when she was lying to her people. Sure, she sacrificed herself in order to keep the wards up, but would they even have been in a position where the wards failed if they had been honest about what was going on? And also, why did they even lie in the first place again? But then come to find out, none of the administration of Basgiath, the people in charge of this country of Navarre, face any consequences for what they have done. Not posthumously for Violet's mom, not the king, not General Melgren, and certainly not General Atos, Dane's dad, because he's going to end up in a further position of power, which is just bonkers to me. But anyway, I guess they just remember Violet's mom as a war hero, which I don't get. She continues to try to reach out for Xaden mentally, but there's only a thick wall of chilled onyx, which is, very a court of mist and fury. And she ponders on the fact that Xaden's going to end up being murdered if anybody finds out that he's a Venin, including her own sister, Mira. Now again, I'm still wondering if the dragons can sense if somebody's a Venin or not. That's unclear. And if so, then wouldn't Mira's dragon pick up on that? If she's in the vicinity of Xaden, wouldn't all the dragons pick up on that? And as a society of dragons whose primary goal is to protect their young and other dragons, wouldn't they as an Imperium come together and be like, we got to get this kid out of here, he's going to spiral, he's a danger? Wouldn't that cause his own dragon to, be called into question by the rest of the Imperium? I don't know. We're already starting with all the questions, aren't we? Violet is mind speaking to Andarna, her rainbow dragon. I already know what Tarn thinks about Xaden, and the possibility of fighting both of you is exhausting, so please, for the love of Amari, be on my side. The bond directly between us shimmers all right. She finally finds Xaden and overhears, eavesdrops on him talking to Jack, who is now a prisoner, basically. Jack says, you can fight it all you want, but that power streaming through her veins, there's a reason the higher-ups want her. A little brotherly advice? Fall in line and find someone else to That infamous control of yours, so much as flickers in her direction. I would never, Xaden retorts, his voice lethally, blah, blah, blah. Of course, his voice and everything about him is lethal. You will slip, and afterward, well, let's just say that silver hair that has you so besotted will be gray like the rest of her, and those weak-ass initiate rings in your eyes won't just last a few days, they'll be permanent. You could deliver her yourself, or you could let me out and we'll do it together. Who knows, they might let her live just to keep you on a leash until you turn a sim and forget all about her. A sim is one of the ranks of Venin. Now I do feel like, judging by book 1, we are gonna see different types of Venin in this book, and I don't think the different types of Venin was really thought out before maybe the end of book 2. I don't think we really knew where we were going with the Venin, which doesn't give me a lot of hope for how this series will pan out. I keep thinking that the next one will get better, right? And this one did a little bit, and then I'm like, well, yeah, but if you think back, that doesn't really make sense. It all falls apart, right? So we're gonna see different types of Venin, including one with silver hair, and I'm like, I don't think that this was thought about until recently. I think that we're just sort of shoving this in here now, and there wasn't a plan beforehand, which it doesn't have to always be planned beforehand. It's just that when it shows, it doesn't really give me a lot of hope that we're going to... This series already has a continuity problem and a lack of answering questions in a way that doesn't just, leave itself to need more answers. I'm trying to be vague, but this is just messy. This is just a messy way to do this Venin thing. If we had thought about it beforehand, if we had plotted it all out, I just feel like we could have fixed those holes beforehand instead of creating them, then trying to fix them, and then making more later. You know what I mean? Just personally, as a reader, and also as somebody who writes, you're never going to see it, but as somebody who writes, I have to plot everything out in advance so that there's no holes. Like I'm trying to patch holes before they happen. You know what I mean? I'm laying on duct tape beforehand. And that's just how I prefer things so that I'm not like dealing with the logic holes after the fact. Violet's really worried about this conversation between Xaden and Jack, obviously. And then Darna's like, we'll find a cure. We will exhaust every closer resource first. I want to find my family. We both know the order to locate my kind is inevitable. Now that your leadership knows what I am, let us do so on our terms and for our own purposes. Let us follow every possible path to a cure. She's right. And Violet's like, well, every possible path may require breaking a few laws. And I'm like, okay, so we had a setup here where I thought that because it says, let us do so on our own terms and for our own purposes, that Andarna would take part in more of the discussion on where to go. But instead, the war college that lied about the Venin is still calling the shots on the dragons, and yet the dragons have said from book 1 that they do not take orders from puny humans. And this did not, in fact, get fixed, and I was honestly shocked by it. I really thought that book 3 was when we were finally going to deviate from that nonsense. And it even says, in response to Violet saying, we're going to have to break a few laws, and Darna says, dragons do not answer to the laws of humans. As my bonded and as Taryn's writer, you no longer answer to them either. And I'm like, okay, are we finally going to do that? And then we didn't do it. And it was shocked. I was like, why even say that then? Like, why even set that as the standard and then not move forward as the standard as the dragons don't take Why did the dragons not call the shots in this book? We're looking for Andarna's family. Taryn and Andarna should be the ones being like, we're not doing your plan. Your plans are stupid. Your plans are terrible. Your plans are the reason why your wards failed. We're in charge or we'll eat you. Let's move forward. But they don't. And then General Atos is like, Violet, you're in trouble. And if you don't do this shit, then I'm going to kick you out of the war college. Maybe. I'm not even sure what the consequence is. And Andarna and Taryn say nothing. Dragons do not answer the laws of humans. She's already bonded to these dragons. Why does she have to listen to this guy? I'm getting ahead of myself. And she does, in fact, use her dragons to contact other dragon riders when they're not in the same room, right? So like right after this, she's like, tell Imogen's dragon that I need to talk to Imogen. Anyway, that was just the prologue. Now we're in chapter 1. Taryn has started calling Xaden the Dark One.
All magic comes with a price.
Which, isn't that in a different book? To be honest, all Xaden wears is black. So I'm surprised he didn't start calling him that sooner, but I guess he's only calling him that now because he's a Venin. But being a Venin doesn't cause your eyes to go black, it causes your eyes to go red. So I guess it's because he's channeling dark magic. I'm just saying that there was an opportunity to start calling, wait, no, don't call Xaden the Dark One because Xaden is a person of color. Actually, erase all of that. Maybe we don't do that at all. Let's go with that. Did you just see like immediately when it clicked that this was a bad idea in real time? Taryn ends up chastising Violet because he's like, you're putting us all in danger. I'm not going to support the myriad of ways you plan to court death in the name of curing one who is beyond redemption. Do not mistake my unflinching support of you, my mate, and Andarna for any form of faith in Xaden. Imogen and the rest of Violet's friends are like, you need to rethink your sleeping arrangements because now they're afraid of Xaden murdering her. They're also not telling Xaden all of the plans for going and finding Andarna's family because he's afraid that he'll be a leak. Also, Sawyer, who got his leg bitten off in the last book, at the end of the last book in the fight with the Venin, he is missing my leg. What? His leg, not mine. Mine's fine. It's right here. He's missing his leg. And this is causing some issues where, you know, he's feeling like he can't participate in things. And I thought this was actually good. Like, I'm like, finally, we get to see what happens when something really rough happens to a rider. Whereas Violet has had EDS her whole life. And that has informed how she can, you know, be a writer, how she trained to be a writer. We have not up to this point seen how anybody who is injured in combat then moves forward as a dragon rider. And this would have been a really good opportunity for the military to show how ableist they are and be like, well, you have to sever your bond with your dragon and force dragons, or try to force dragons to sever bonds, because apparently, as we establish in this book that we did not establish previously in the other two books, you can sever the bond between dragon and rider. So again, here's a really good example of how when we do a new thing that answers the question of, well, what if, we then open ourselves up to more logical holes, okay? What if a dragon a dragon rider gets injured. What does that look like in the scope of the military? How does the military respond? Apparently, the military responds by allowing you to still be a dragon rider. In which case, why don't we have more adaptive technology like Violet's saddle? And why don't we let more people into the dragon riding college, which needs more people to fight their enemies, which they were saying were the Griffins, but whatever. Why can't you be threatened with having your bond severed if you do not maintain the status that the military wants you to be? So like in the US military, they have PT standards and you can get kicked out if you do not meet their physical PT standards. I believe you can still serve if you get a leg amputated. Don't quote me on that. I'd have to ask Carlos. So that's like a logical question. How does this army, if a Griffin were to have bitten off the leg of a dragon rider, or a dragon rider got stuck somewhere, because terrain or something, leg comes off, arm comes off, right? How does the military deal with that? We get that question answered, they can stay in, but then why doesn't this ruthless military, knowing that bonds can be severed, allow or force the bonds to be severed? You see what I mean? Anyway, so a theme that we're going to see throughout this book is Sawyer feeling like he can't participate because of his disability. But at no point is the Dragon Riding College going to address this in a way that feels sufficient. They're not going to be like, okay, well, sever the bond with your dragon so that we can put somebody else in your place. Which sounds like something this really shitty military would do to one of its members, but they just don't? I don't understand. So in the infirmary, Infirmary, good God, Rachel. A shrill scream is let out and someone says, she's dead, they're all dead. There's a gray handprint on the side of this person's neck, which means that there's a venin in the infirmary. Now, I don't really fully understand how the venin's magic does and does not work at certain times. This might just be a me thing where I didn't really fully understand it despite it having been answered, because the wards are supposed to prevent this. Anyway, the venin attacked, end of chapter. Next chapter is chapter 2. It opens with saying, the rarest of signets, those that rise, shouldn't that be arise? Anyway, once in a generation or century had manifested concurrently with an equal twice in our records, both critical times in our history, but only once have the 6 most powerful walked the continent simultaneously. As fascinating as that spectacle must have been, I would rather not live to see it happen again. And that is an excerpt from a study on Signet, which I would love to have a physical copy of so that I could understand some of the magic in this book. Chapter 2, they're within the walls, Taryn says, and Violet says, already figured that out. So now, if Taryn did not realize that from Violet, and Violet saying, yes, I know as well, then how did Taryn know? Did he sense them? How did he know? Did somebody else's dragon tell him, or did he sense them? Because I really need to know if the dragons can sense venin or not. That's important to me understanding certain mechanics of this world and knowing whether or not there's a logical hole there. So then they run into a group of venin. They assume they're there for Jack. And of course, Riddick, with his quips that are supposed to be funny, but I find them eye-roll worthy, says, down the stairwell to the torture chamber where an untold number of freshly fed dark wielders wait. Good times. So she sees one of the venin and it's her long silver braid swings free of her hood. My blood chills when a smirk tilts her mouth, distorting the red veins at her temples, and then she disappears. So one of the venin has a silver braid like Violet. Not the silver hair, one of the dark wielders says. I scramble to my feet. We need her, it says. There's a black-haired venin. Now, all the venin we saw in book 1 were all, I guess, of a certain rank, but I don't really know why we're suddenly seeing these assumedly lower ranks now, and they look so different. They have long silver hair and one of them has black hair. So you can see why I'm like, these venin look different than the venin that were in the first book. And if those venin were higher rank, why did we send the higher ranked ones first? Because all of them are dead now. So she's in a fight with a bunch of venin. Says, you're a long way from the sky, and we both know you can't kill me with that knife. And I'm like, wait, her magic doesn't work unless she's closer to the sky. So if she's underground, does she have access to no power? I don't feel like that was the case. before. I feel like she's been in like, how does that work exactly? What are we talking? Like super thick stone walls? What are we saying here? And the sky, like, does it have to be a cloudy day then? What if there's no clouds? Anyway, the whole room fills with shadows, and you know who shows up and says, "Tell me something, Violence." A muscle in his square jaw ticks, of course it does, rippling the tawny brown skin of his stubbled cheek. "Why is it always you?" He's worried about using magic, and she says, "I trust you." And he says, "You shouldn't." I was like, oh, I was right. We're gonna do that theme this whole book. Anyway, after this fight is over and the Venin are all dead, she and Xaden talk, and she explains that their friends want her to reconsider her sleeping arrangements because they sleep in the same room, her and Xaden. "Maybe you should." "That's not happening. I told Imogen to get." He says that Sgale, his dragon, is still not talking to him. Flying is awkward. Violet's like, oh, she'll come around, and Taryn chimes in to say, don't count on it. She knows I'm not whole. And Violet says, do you still love me? I enunciate every word. I know you enunciated every word because you put a period after every single word. You don't need to tell me. I was there. I could reach the rank of Maven, lead armies of dark wielders against everyone we care for, and watch every vein in my body turn red as I channel all the power in the continent, and I would still love you. What I did doesn't change that. I'm not sure anything can. See? You're still you. Telling me you're capable of horrible things while still loving me is pretty much your idea of foreplay. No, because there is no foreplay. I know because I have studied the sex scenes in this series with a very careful eye. There's no foreplay. So she asks, hey, how did you know to come help me with the Venin? And he says that he can sense them the same way that they sense me. Now, why the Venin would not out this information when it could be helpful to them, I don't know. Maybe they're hoping that he'll come around. I don't know. We don't hear from the Venin enough for it to for those stakes to really be clear. But anyway, he says that this sense, the way that he can see them, find them, know that they're there is how I know I've changed, how Garrick and I have managed to slay more than a dozen of them this week. I can feel them calling to me, just like I can feel the source pulsing beneath my feet with its incomparable power because I'm one of them. His eyes narrow. Scared yet? Chapter 3. It starts with a letter between her mom to her dad, from her mom to her dad. It says, God's help her, my love. I'm afraid our daughter has atrocious taste in men. And I'm like, oh, are we finally going to talk about who Violet could have possibly dated before she knew Xaden? Because I still don't think it makes sense that she lived at this war college, obviously slept with other people because it mentioned that, and then somehow never saw Xaden, even though she was climbing that tree in book 1 and they both hung out at that tree on the regular, and yet they never saw each other? I don't understand how that's possible. Just because he can sense them doesn't mean he gave up part of his soul, right? Scared of you? I shake my head. Never. You will be, he says. So if they were able to easily come together with her evil empire government to band together against the monsters, right? Then why didn't we do this the entire time? The Empire is this willing to fork over power and work together with the Griffins against a threat that they've been hiding this entire time. It's no longer important to them to hide the threat. Then whatever they were hiding the threat for in the first place is now rendered moot. The stakes is now gone. And I don't understand. End of sentence. I don't understand. Anyway, we're about to do a bunch of stuff with the Griffin. Also, Garrick says to Xaden, she told you we think she should sleep somewhere else, didn't she? Thought you'd at least be logical, Violet. Me? You're the ones acting based on your feelings and with no evidence whatsoever. Bitch, you're so stupid. That's so stupid. Y'all have all fought Venin. You don't know anything about the Venin. You barely know anything about them. And instead of being like, I demand that my government who's been lying to me about the Venin now tell me everything about the Venin so that I can then use that information to find out if there's ever been a case where somebody has turned Venin and then flipped it back around. But no, instead, you're arguing with your friends and saying, you don't know anything, when they literally do. They literally do. You're supposed to be the logical, book smart one, and instead of going and looking for a book, you're telling your friends they don't know things that we all know. You're so stupid. My decision to trust him is based purely on the facts of our proven history. Yeah, his proven history before he became a Venin. There's never been a case where somebody is the same person they were before they became a Venin, and you have talked to Jack. You know, you've spoken to a Venin. You know this. Oh my God. Also, I just thought of this. Do Venin have babies? Do Venin have babies? Somebody get Red Tower on the phone. I want to know if a Venin and a Venin make a baby, is it a Venin baby? Do they lose the ability to reproduce? How does this work? I'm just asking logical questions, okay? Do Venin bone at all? That's another question I have. Do they bone? Or are they singularly focused? Do they eat? Do Venin eat? What do Venin do? Do they have houses? What's the Venin land like? Are they like susceptible to the elements? And if there's nothing in the Barrens, nothing at all, everything is ash, then what do they do? Where do they get food? Do they eat? Oh my God, I have so many questions about the Venin. I'm just realizing this now. Up to this point, I've just been like, yeah, the Venin over here. I'll just put that over here to the side and we're not gonna think about it. And now I'm like, wait, I need to think about that for a second. How are they existing the way that they are existing? Anyways, General Malgren's back, somehow still in power, his beady eyes narrowing as he looks down his beak of a nose at me. Why is it always that villains get described like this? And if the villain is hot, then he's the love interest, but the villain is not hot, then he has beady eyes and a hooked nose. Why is that? Why are we doing that? Cadet Sorengil, the Scenarium is ready to receive you, General Malgren says. 6 nobles dressed in lushly embroidered tunics and gowns sit facing me at the closest end, representing each of Navarre's 6 provinces. Oh, so it's like the council in Arcane. God, I wish I were reading Arcane. I miss Arcane. We've been briefed by General Malgren and conferred with the king, the Duke of Caldir says. As of this moment, you will be assigned to a task force, which will embark on a quest to find and recruit the 7th dragon breed, with an aim to increase our numbers and hopefully provide insight into killing the Venin. Hopefully provide insight into killing the Venin. This is the only... You guys erased that history. I'm sure you still have some stuff that you can... Okay. No, it's fine. So Violet says, should we agree to participate, this is a list of Andarna's demands. And a Duchess says, you are not in a place to make demands. While we owe your mother a debt of gratitude, you are still considered a deserter. And I'm like, but the dragons are in a position to make demands. And the dragons and Violet are supposed to be bonded. So yes, she is in a position to make demands. Why are the dragons not saying, hi, I'm actually gonna roast your ass if you don't give me what I want. I'm in charge. I'm the captain now. This assignment is being made in good faith with the understanding that the riot of Griffin riders will remain at Besgaeth. Llewellyn, seeing as you've secretly represented Orisha for years, which is a separate issue this council has yet to address, perhaps you'd be willing to read her demands. And I'm like, this council's been lying about the Venin. How is this council even in charge? And they're like, well, some of these demands are quite unique. And Violet says, well, yeah, and Darna is also unique. So I'm gonna take 6 riders, and Malgren interrupts and he's like, you're gonna take f***ing no one. You are a 2nd-year cadet who will only be allowed to participate because we need your dragon. It has already been decided that Captain Grady will lead. And I'm like, hold up. Give a moment, please. How is it that Tarn, who's so sassy, is not like, no, incorrect. Incorrect. I will be taking over this mission now. Actually, the dragons will deal with this. I don't even understand why humans are having this council meeting. Why isn't the Imperium having this council meeting? This is about finding other dragons. Why aren't we asking the other dragons about the other dragons? What are we doing? We will consider approving her other requests. I thought that humans didn't command dragons. What do you mean consider approving? She could eat you. And Violet's like, well, at least let the flyers enter the quadrant, the rider's quadrant, when they can't even wield to protect themselves because their signets don't work behind the ward. The riders will eat them alive. I walk into the hall recognizing Tecarus, Viscount Tecarus' sprawling handwriting. You have 3 days to hold up your end of the bargain. She had made a bargain with Tecarus. Her and Xaden talk later. The plan went to shit. A band of shadow wraps around my waist a second before my hair is swept to the side. Xaden sets his lips to the juncture of my neck and shoulder in an open mouth kiss. Mine, he growls against me. Mine, I counter. Ah, yes, the mine thing. As we know from the time that I went over the spicy scenes in great detail. This is one of the first things that they do in at least the first or second third of the spicy scenes is they say mine. I love you so much it hurts, she says. Good, because that's exactly how I love you too. She whimpers. He says, that's one of my favorite sounds. Second only those little gasps you make in the moments before you. Rhymes with some. I moan and my head thrashes into the pillow. Oh, they're in her room. As my power whips through me. Changed my mind. He slides two fingers somewhere. That's my favorite sound. Oh, the moaning is his favorite sound. How do you want me to take you, Violet? Take her where? To church, YouTube. What were you thinking? Here on your back with me above you, before me on your hands and knees with your rear in the air against the wall so I can drive harder, astride you so you can control the pace? Tell me. Control, that's only an illusion when it comes to being with him. And she says, all of it. And I'm like, yeah, well, that's the list of stuff we've done like all the other times before. So what else is new? During his eyes flare and he says, I can feel it. I can feel you. And I'm like, yeah, well, you're like in there, my guy. So anyways, he says she's bright and hot and forking perfect. I'm afraid to swear because YouTube is going to give me a content violation again. Oh, I just said the F word. Frick! Violet, he groans, and lines etch between his brow as his jaw flexes, as if he's holding himself back. Why would he be fighting this? Fighting us? I'm his, but he's mine too. Doesn't he remember how good we are together? My power snaps, light flashes to my left as I shatter. So she's in a room. So is it that because there's a window she can access her lightning? How does this work again? I catch the scent of burnt wood. Xaden whips both his hands to the headboard above me, torture twisting his face. Xaden, I reach for him. Don't, he says. I need space. She gets away from him, says, is this far enough? Not sure the Isle Kingdoms would be far enough. She's like, I'm sorry? He says, I forgot. It was the most natural thing in the world to reach for you, but I'm not natural anymore. I'm so sorry, Violet. And she's like, no, I think you just did us a favor. Nothing bad happened. You had your hands all over me and inside me. Don't get mad at me, YouTube. And I'm perfectly fine. Give me 2 seconds to crawl across this bed and you'll be gloriously fine too. He says, not fine. He like gets her attention to look at the headboard and there's like 2 faint marks of discoloration from where his hands were. And she's like, oh no, did he just channel? No, he didn't. He had a stain on his hands. For some reason, he was woodworking before he was woodworking. Chapter 4, it's barely there because I stopped. The second your power rose, I felt it and remembered why I'd promised to myself I wasn't going to touch you. I can't afford to lose control around you. And she's like, I'm looking in your eyes right now and there's no red. I can barely see it and only because I'm looking. I took it without thinking, without choice. And if it had been you, I never would have forgiven myself. Okay, stop, hold on. We need to ask the question, the logical question here. Is it then that you only channel from your hands? Okay, I'm gonna have to use a euphemism here. So we're going to use the euphemism for his you-know-what. We're going to use eggplant. So is it that you only channel from your hands? Because he was touching her with his eggplant, right? So clearly, if the eggplant is touching her, but the hands are the part that touch the headboard and channel, then it stands to reason that if you cut off a Venin's hands, because their eggplant clearly can't channel, right? We just realized this. His hands only did it, not his eggplant. So why not just cut off all Venin's hands? That's the logical question to ask here. If their eggplants can't channel during spicy time, but their hands still do, then why not just cut off their hands because the hands are the problem? I'm just asking the logical questions here. What do you want from me? The eggplant doesn't channel. It's logical. Are you going to be all broody and try to pull away? Yes, I called that from the end of the last book. That was going to be the problem keeping you apart, because there always has to be a problem keeping you apart. You guys can't just be together, and you guys have to constantly talk about the thing that's keeping you apart, because these books are nothing if not just repetition times 1,000. Okay, so during spicy time, he had sent her a memory of them, I think, boinking one time before or something, which is also, isn't that something that Rhysand does? Just so you know, that memory of yours was really hot. I loved every second of it. I'm not quite sure how I even did it. Wait, no. Did she share a memory with him or the other way around? It doesn't really matter. But anyway, they're like, well, is memory sharing an intrinsic thing or a bond thing? Anyways, they're talking about Council and Melgren and a guy named Lyndall and Llewellyn, who was like a foster father who was siding with the Griffins secretly against Navarre. And the guy why Lyndall was the one who had made sure that Xaden and Liam were training so that they could enter the Riders Quadrant and survive. She says, was it not Lyndall who made sure you and Liam were trained to enter the quadrant? It was, though Llewellyn had a hand in it too. I'm sure it's crossed Melgren's mind that he could wipe the slate clean. There's a lot of chaos in these halls and almost no one of rank to notice. If Melgren was going to do this, wouldn't Xaden sense it? And also, wouldn't Melgren's dragon sense it? And why would the dragon not caution Melgren against it, seeing as Sigale would take out Melgren if he killed Xaden? I don't understand any of this. But Xaden says that Melgren killing Xaden is not required to annihilate the Tirish aristocracy. Officially, I'm just a lieutenant who has no place in any of the negotiations, and yet I'm supposed to speak for Arisha, according to your brother. The assembly runs Arisha. I just own the house, which is probably a good thing since I'm, well, Venin. Great on the battlefield, but not a great governing quality. Well, you're also really shit at loyalty, sir. Even to your allies. And you said like in multiple times that you don't care what happens to your allies. Like you told Violet, I don't care what happens to Catriona, even though that would cause a bunch of shit with Arisha. You often say that you're willing to just go off with Violet and abandon everything and everyone. So the governing quality that's up in you isn't just that you are a Venin, it's that you have no loyalty, you don't care about any of this, you just want to run off and bone. So they're trying to work out the terms of the riot, staying in the quadrant, and Llewellyn seems to think that he can at least get Xaden's father's sword back from King Tari. If we don't stay, Paromial walks. If Navarre can't protect the flyers here at Basgaeth, Paromial walks. If anyone murders anyone, which happens a lot around here, Paromial walks. It then mentions a bunch of people that I just don't remember who they are. So like one person's name is Kylan, who's an agrarian. Oh, he was referred to as Battle Axe. Isn't that guy like on the Revolution's Council or something? And then there's another person named Signet, who I don't know who that is. Mira shows up, her sister, and is like, so where's Violet heading off to again with this task force? We're being sent to find the rest of Andarna's kind. Andarna wants to go. I should have told you before you left, but the Imperium hadn't approved it yet. Then they talk about how Queen Maria, who is the queen of Paromial, the Griffin riding country, hopes the 7th breed, which is the Rainbow Dragons, might know how to defeat the Venin given the age of Andarna's egg. So Andarna, when she was an egg, not that Andarna has an egg, but Andarna being an egg in Navarre means that it can't have been that long ago that the Rainbow Dragons were here, and maybe they'll have some information on how to defeat the Venin. But then again, if that were true, then why aren't we addressing the Imperium? Why isn't the Imperium talking about the Rainbow Dragons? It's not like they can't have known. And why don't we ask the Imperium about their knowledge on defeating the Venin? Why are we not doing that? Who's the Imperium again? Who's all in there? Either way, whether or not the Rainbow Dragons have any information on the Venin, they also need a Rainbow Dragon to come back and breathe on the ward stone, because you can only create a ward stone to keep the Venin out by having one dragon of like the strong dragons of each, or is it any dragon of the breed of dragons? One of each color of dragon has to breathe on the stone. And specifically, they're trying to ward Arisha, which is the kingdom that Xaden is the Duke of, the leader of, because his dad was in charge previously, and they're trying to ward it in order to keep the Venin out. Violet doesn't want Xaden to lose his home twice. In chapter 5, she's discussing the fact that there was a Venin with silver hair near Jack's cell. Everyone's hair eventually turns gray, but not the Venin, right? Don't they lose all their hair? I thought that the Venin had no hair in the first and second, or at least the beginning of the second book. Did I remember that wrong? And either way, we're talking about Venin. Sure, everybody's hair turns gray, but not everybody has red veins coming out of their face because they've been channeling magic from the earth. They've been debating whether or not the Griffin Riders can stay at Basgaeth and train with the Dragon Riders, even though they don't have Signets, which Signets are kind of not the most important thing. Anyways, so why they don't want them to train with them is a mystery, but sure, I guess just send your now allies back to Orisha where there's no wards and they could be killed. What's the point of this? I don't get it. But now instead of building camaraderie between the Griffin Flyers and the Dragon Riders, these two groups of students are arguing amongst each other. They're never going to accept us, says one of the Griffin Flyers. They don't have to, Violet says. We already have. Aura Banehaven, who's one of the Dragon Riders who Violet doesn't like, challenges one of the Griffin Riders. Dane shows up and says, Article 4, Section 4, riders outside quadrant chain of command can't interfere with cadet matters. They haven't crossed the parapet. They haven't climbed the gauntlet. They won't even accept a challenge. We don't tolerate cowards. You don't tolerate cowards? Your leadership is full of cowards who lied to you all. So, you no longer speak for Fourth Wing Atos. You're nothing here. We chose truth, Dane says. We chose to defend the helpless. You chose to break the riot. Fracture the quadrant, Aura says. I actually think this fight makes sense. I actually think that this fight does make a little bit of sense because there has to be some people who are like, well, we have to maintain this like rigid idea where the Griffin Riders have to be out, right? But I don't like that we set it up where it's like the good people never ever doubt Violet. We always stick with Violet, and the bad people who end up dead, like Aura does, are the ones who blindly follow and they're mad at the Griffin Riders. It's just very shallow. Aura says, defeat me and your flyers live to see the morning. Fail to rise to the occasion and will stain this courtyard red. I'm not fighting you, Aura, Dane says. Well, I'm fighting you, she says. This is so corny. And Darna's like, okay, well, Dane's not the strongest here. You are, so Violet, you should fight her. Aura calls them rebels, and Violet says, rebel is so outdated. We prefer the term revolutionary. And I'm like, oh my God, how much corn are we gonna shove into this chapter? If you're gonna wield, then it's me you'll be dealing with, because Aura used her powers in fighting Dane, which you're not supposed to do, I guess. Chapter 6, Dane's too honorable to wield in a challenge, but you'll find that my sense of morality has learned to waver. So in this fight, she's berating Aura and saying, the only reason you survived the attack is because we gained access to the knowledge Navarre purposely hid from us. We stole it, we translated it, we saved your ass. Now, I'm not sure why more people don't know about this. If it were me, if I was Violet, I would have been telling everybody. I would have been like, hey, we saved you. They all lied to you. We should overthrow the government. We should overthrow the government. We have more power and we have dragons. We have dragons. We have more dragons than they do. The people who got lied to outnumber vastly the people who did the lying. We should overthrow the government. But no, for some reason, we never did that. We don't have that conversation. The Griffin Riders fought by our side for months, even after we spent centuries condemning their people to death because we're unwilling to share the one resource that could have saved them. We can't keep doing this. We can't keep accepting needless casualties in the quadrant in the name of strengthening the wing, not when every single one of us is needed in this war. You've seen what's out there. Either this alliance begins right here with us, with our generation, or we will be the last Dragon Riders and Griffin Flyers on the continent. And one of the professors, Amateria, says, die now and the scribes will call your name in the morning. Choose to fight your common enemy, and there's a chance you'll live to graduate. And then one of the professors says, the last time a shadow and lightning wielder fought side by side, they managed to drive the Venin back to the Barrens for a few hundred years. Zayden and I are the first of our Signets to live simultaneously since the Great War? Of course you are. You're the special. Never forget it. Kat says to Violet, I can see it sometimes, why he chose you. Nice speech. They're talking to Auric, who is going by a pseudonym because he's really the youngest prince, but his older brother, the crown prince, who's gonna be king someday, is Halden, and he is in Basgaia for the negotiations, talking about, letting the Griffin Riders into the college and also talking about this task force. And Auric's like, so is my brother complicating negotiations? He's told, well, he's certainly not helping. Llewellyn, the guy who has been on the side of the Griffin Riders this whole time, but is still allowed on the council, even though General Melgren is a piece of shit. I don't understand any of this. Llewellyn says to Auric, the younger prince, thought that you might consider putting your father out of his misery. He has half his personal guard searching for you. And Auric, the prince, says, shows how effective they are, don't you think? Oh my God. The book being self-aware that the Navarrians are being incompetent all the time, every day. Oh, wow, what a choice. And they're like, so Halden's gonna end up going on this task force, isn't he? Halden, Taryn muses slowly, and I swear I can feel his non-existent eyebrows rise. And Darna's like, so we kill her, we kill him if he makes Violet uncomfortable. Problem solved. And Taryn says, you cannot kill the heir to the throne. And I'm like, why? Excuse me? Hello? Question? Why? Why can't the dragons do whatever they want? The dragons don't answer to humans. We said it in this book. We said it in the other two. Why can't the dragons just do whatever they want? Who's going to stop them? Who is going to stop them? The deal, the alliance, the deal with Viscount Tecarus was to make sure that the Griffin riders get taken to Basgiath, I guess. That deal is falling apart. And she's like, so, okay, then our plan B is going to have to be treason. Xaden is officially given back Tyrrendor. Orisha is the capital of Tyrrendor. Right, got it. So he's officially back in power as the Duke of Tyrrendor. And she's like, oh shit, I need to find a cure. He's being sent away. Oh my gosh, who could have guessed that they'd be separated again? And he makes her promise that if he loses himself and he goes too far, then she has to take him out. In chapter 7, they're talking to Sawyer, and she's like, I need your help with something. Mira found a way to alter runes. The rune stuff is so confusing. Basically, Sawyer is a metallurgist. That's his signet, and they need his help with runes stuff. And Sawyer's like, well, I'm not good enough for stuff like that. He says his dragon won't even. I don't know if that means his dragon won't even let him fly. I'm not really sure. He's like, I don't know if I can help you with these kinds of things. So basically, they need Sawyer's help in order to create runes to help the Griffin flyers be able to do their magic. And somebody says, how does the Imperium feel about this? Oh my God, are we really asking that question? Stop it. Not now. Not after I've been asking at least 5 times and we're only in, chapter 5? Stop that. You were there when we gave our word that the flyers would be educated with the riders. If Navarre wants us, then they take all of us, which is, the Griffin riders and our squad. You're all aware that if we fail, the wards could fail, and if we succeed, there's every chance we'll be charged with treason and executed by dragon. And Tarn says that's not happening. And I'm like, then why don't you just take charge, Tarn? If you're willing to cut in now, why aren't you willing to cut in any other time? Talking to Rhiannon about her mom, Violet says, I'm not even sure I miss her or the chance that we had at eventually being something. Maybe not what you and your mom have, but something. And I thought that this was important because I felt like the mommy issues were really underdone. So I thought that that was a really impactful moment where I'm like, yeah, you can. I'm glad that we didn't just say, I miss my mom so much. I'm glad we said, I had a complicated relationship with my mom and I more miss what we could have been. I mean, I'm like that with my dad and he's still alive. I miss what we could have been. So Sawyer does the metallurgy magic and makes it so that this got done so quickly. It was bonkers. This could have been the whole plot. Anyway, they just zoomed right through Sawyer agreeing, doing the metallurgy stuff, and now the flyers can in fact wield behind the wards, which solves the problem. They won't be sent back to Orisha to be unprotected. Now, Violet has saved the deal with Viscount Tecarus, so he's still on board. Once again, Violet saves the day. So now they're back in Battle Brief, and they not only have, the Dragon Riders, but now the Griffin Flyers are part of Battle Brief. For some reason, they don't disperse the Griffin Flyers evenly. They stick them in 3rd and 4th wings, so now 3rd and 4th wing are larger than 1st and 2nd, which gives them an advantage during war games. Get over it. I'm like, wow, this dragon riding college is so efficient. What a great idea to make things unfair for no reason. Anyway, in strides Colonel Atos, Dane's dad, and he says, Violet Sorengale, you are hereby charged with high treason against the Kingdom of Navarre. End of chapter. Chapter 8. Colonel Atos delivering the accusation is a blow I didn't see coming. Dane's like, Dad? And Colonel Atos is like, I have no son. Not the daddy issues. You're as good as dead for what you've done. I will only speak to the scenarium. Violet says, good thing they're gathered. She walks in, Xaden, to the council, the scenarium of all the leaders of Navarre, which now includes her boyfriend, Xaden, who's the Duke of Tyrrendor, and he mind speaks to her and says, what happened to not getting in trouble? I never promised that, she says. You really fucked with the wards? Somebody's like, your newest addition, Xaden, needs to recuse himself for his proximity to the traitor. The Duke of Caldir's like, nah, Colonel Atos, you need to leave. So they talk about the fact that Violet is in trouble for fucking with the wards, which they know because she left her patch at the crime scene so that the only person who would get in trouble for this is her. My God, we love a sacrificial lamb. Has anyone reported that the capabilities of the wards were damaged beyond allowing the flyers to wield? Says the Duke of Caldir. We haven't been swarmed and Barlow remains in our interrogation chamber. order, so the wards are holding. Violet says, I was the one who orchestrated altering the ward stone. I'm the reason the flyers can wield, and that you now have a clear path to negotiate an alliance. You're welcome. And there's nothing they can do because they already signed like treaties and stuff so that they can work with the Paromial, the Griffin Riders. Then Queen Mariah of Paromial walks in. Viscount Tecarus spoke of the deal you made. You truly risked your king's wrath, your kingdom's defenses, all to keep my flyers here. Yes, Violet says. And in return, you only asked for unfettered access to his library? It's our best hope for any historical record of how we defeated the Venin centuries ago. And secretly to herself, Violet says, and how we can cure them. Tell me you didn't do this for me, Xaden thinks to her. I thought we promised never to lie to each other. Okay, President Snow. Queen Mariah's like, well, Viscount Tecarus's library isn't the best. Mine is. I'll have my steward send you a full catalog. And I'm like, so Violet's hoping to find a secret to defeating the Venin in the library catalog of Queen Mariah, who's closer to the Venin. Her country gets their ass kicked by the Venin all the time, right? Why wouldn't Queen Mariah instruct her own librarian and her own scholars instead of this 25-year-old from a different country to go in there and be like, what do we know about the Venin? We need to know everything we know about the Venin. Queen Mariah should be the one answering the questions because she should have already been in the library trying to get those answers. What do you mean? You mean the 25-year-old who's not in charge is the only person who thought of, hey, maybe there's an answer in the library. The library's owner didn't think of it? Why? We have yet to come across any such historical record. And Violet thinks if I don't find it, Justinia will. Ah, yes, because an entire different country can't find it in their own library, but these two chuckle from another country, these 25-year-olds, they'll find the answer. I just cannot suspend my disbelief enough to buy that. Now, if it's all in a different language and somehow Paromial doesn't know the language, but Violet and Justinia do, maybe they've been God's blessed to understand God's language and the gods have the answers for the Venin. That would make sense. But to just like have an entire country be incompetent to know what's in their own library and find the answers and these two random 25-year-olds are going to solve the problem seems like such a stupid idea. You will face consequences, Colonel Atos roars. Not from you, she won't, says Brennan. You, Colonel Atos says, this whole time. You tried to kill us at Athbean, sent assassins after me in the fall, and even sicked Varish on me, and I'm still here. You lost, Colonel Atos. Yet I'm the one the king appointed to take over as commanding general of Basgiath. No. Anyone but him. You're unfit to sit at her desk, Brennan says. One of my dragons is among the most powerful on the continent and the other is the rarest. I didn't realize it last year or even a few months ago, but I do now. You can't afford to kill me. Hold on. Pause. I'm sorry. So she didn't realize it a few months ago, but this person who's been in the military, who sent assassins after this girl with the two dragons, he didn't come to that conclusion before making those calls? That's what I'm being asked to buy here. His own dragon, who knew about this, because it's impossible for him to not know, his own dragon didn't say, hey buddy, that's not a good choice. Bad choice, my guy. How is this even possible? And now his dragon is just letting him be in power of the dragon riders when he sicks assassins on dragon riders, which would then affect the other dragons. I don't get this. You can't afford to lose either of my dragons, let alone my Signet. And you sure as Mallet can't afford to lose Lieutenant Ryerson's, or should I call him the Duke of Tyrandor? I am now beyond your reach. Well, I know exactly where to strike in order to bring you to heel, Cadet. Your siblings may be out of my chain of command, but your friends are not. Why would their dragons allow this? Their dragons heard that, right? Their dragons, because why would his dragon not say, hey buddy, you can't affect a bunch of other dragons by killing off their riders. That's bonkers. You can't do this to us. If the dragons were not all in league with each other, then sure. But they are! They'll pay each and every time you disobey an order or step out of line. And then he orders her and all of her friends to do duty at the outpost of Samara where Xaden was stationed last year. And he's like, but surely your Signet will keep your squad mates alive, and 2 days should put you back before your dragon feels the loss of his mate. This is the point where, once again, Taryn could cut in and be like, I'm not doing that. I refuse to do that. I will not be doing that. So who's going to fly her there? Because it's not going to be me. And also, I'll eat you. Taryn doesn't chime in at all, which is bonkers. Why wouldn't he? He only cuts in at the most random times. He is not consistently the character that we have been told that he is. Only when it's convenient does Taryn start talking. I guess you better get going. I hope to see you all return intact. Chapter 9. Calling cadets into active service in times of war may only be authorized by the commanding general of Basgaev. Yeah, but why would their dragons agree to this? Wouldn't their dragons be demanding answers of his dragon? Ah! The fortress at Samara should feel familiar thanks to how many times I've visited Satan. So they show up and the guy in charge of Samara is like, he invoked an Article 8 to send cadets? Why? They were like, well, you know, they said that you guys are not doing so hot over here. He said, well, that intel is old. Fighting ended yesterday, and even if it hadn't, I'm not apt to send cadets into battle. So this guy, who's not as high up as Colonel Atos, is more reasonable than Colonel Atos. Why? Why is that? No, we're gonna move on. So they ask, okay, well, what about the Promish citizens that were being attacked? Are we offering them refuge? We're under strict orders not to allow anyone in unless something in negotiations changes, but we crossed the border and fought with your people up until the horde departed yesterday. And Kat's like, thank you, you have our gratitude. The guy in charge, seems DeGrency or whatever, he doesn't come up again, it's not important, says to Violet, do me a favor and ask that dragon of yours to stay out of sight. You are both formidable weapons, but you're also a giant target. And again, I feel like Tairn himself would know this. He's old as he understands these things. Why are we pretending that Tairn is not there and is not capable of saying, hey, I'm actually going to dip because I'm really noticeable and I don't want anybody to see me? But no, we make it so that the humans order him around. The humans have to be the one to tell him what to do, right? What do you mean? He's been in this army a really long time. And also, now it looks stupid for Colonel Atos to have sent that dragon and its rider away in a fit of rage, because that seems to have put everybody in danger because Tairn is so noticeable. Why would you put a noticeable dragon near the border? Why would you do that? But instead, Tairn says, I agree as a matter of your safety. What? So this guy says, I don't care what you did to piss off Colonel Atos. I'm too busy fighting a war. You guys can get some rest and then make yourselves useful. They do fall asleep and Violet has a dream. I can't find it. Panic seizes my heart. I'm so glad we've moved on from panic fisting my heart, which is what was used in the first book. Growth is beautiful, isn't it? It has to be here. Heat scorches the side of my face. Panic threatens to seize my muscles. All right, see, now we're getting redundant. Where's the editor? I ordered this with editing. She sees Kat in her dream. She's looking for a piece of art, and then she sees her parents and her family and they're burning, and then she wakes up. She's sleeping in the room that was Xaden's when he was located in Samara, and I'm like, wow, that just happened to be available? Okay. But what's worse is his wards are still up in this room that he no longer occupies. So the only people that could get into that room are him and Violet. So she had to pull these people in one by one into the room so they could all sleep there. He didn't have to unward the room before he left. He doesn't own Samara. Why was he allowed to do that? It even says it's been months since he slept there. And yet nobody had, I just don't understand how you write that and you don't think, wait, does it make sense that there's a dorm here that Xaden warded that nobody else needed, and the military's just like, yep, that's that guy we hate's dorm room. He claimed it. We can't give it to anyone. I just don't, are you serious? But like, they needed a safe place to sleep, so now they have one. Conveniently, when they get up, they realize, or they find out that there's a Promish city that was under attack. It's odd for Venin to target such a small village, but scouts reported smoke. But the village is too small to risk any more casualties to the unit, says the major, and the major's like, it's not because they're Promish, but it's because we can't help. Not all of us wield lightning, Violet. And Violet's like, I know, I'll defy orders. Tairn will listen to me, because apparently Tairn does whatever the fuck he wants, except when it would make sense for him to do whatever the fuck he wants. So her squad takes a vote. They all vote to go help out this town. Chapter 10. Weather is the one great equalizer in battle. Huh! Weather is the one great equalizer. I thought that we just previously learned in the last book that runes are the great equalizer, which I'm still waiting to understand why it is then that the Promish don't use runes at all, even though they weren't barred from it the way that the Navarre people were like barred from learning about it anyway. Nope, that makes sense. Tairn gets told from another dragon that she saw them leave and the humans are ordering them back, like the dragons are communicating, and Tairn says, I do not answer to Maze. the dragon. Who do you answer to? Still up in the air, still wondering. So they get into a fight with some wyvern. It says that in the village, half of it is devoid of color, drained of all its magic, and the center of the village stands a single figure in flowing dark robes, her light hair, silver, whipping around. I think she was expecting us. This is a trap. Yeah, no, yep. You were really stupid to have gone. We just said in the last chapter, hey, your dragon's really noticeable, and then you were told not to go somewhere, and then you went there with your very noticeable dragon. Sure, okay. And then Taryn gets hurt, which is the first time that this has ever happened in this series so far. We're like genuinely afraid that Taryn is dying. And Darna can't feel him through the bond. Violet can't feel him through the bond. Did I just call her Violent? Violet. This isn't how he ends. How we end. Liam only had minutes after his dragon stopped breathing, but he knew. But the thing is, here's the thing, is even if her dragon dies, she could survive by becoming Venin. Because Jack's not dead. Jack killed his dragon, and yet he's still alive because he's Venin, right? Assumedly. Therefore, it stands to reason that if she's dying, the only way to save herself is to channel through the earth, save herself, become a Venin, and she's already looking for a cure anyway, right? She says to Andarna, you're the only one of your kind, you have to live no matter what happens to us. She's thinking about Xaden, how this is going to ruin Xaden's life, and how, you know, the rest of it, whatever's left of that. But then, no worries, because Taryn is breathing. Now, in this fight, she did get hurt, and I will say that as opposed to the last book, we are talking about Violet's EDS more in this book than we have in the last book. I think that was feedback that did get to Rebecca Yarros, and she was like, you know what, I am going to write that more because it doesn't make sense for Violet to be doing certain things and just to have, like, no consequences. I'm not just talking about the spicy scenes. I like very specifically remember at the end of the last book, there was a moment where she's like jumping and flying, you know, to hop onto another dragon, and there was no consequence to this, which I thought was so weird. It like springs up sometimes and then randomly doesn't. There just doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to it. And I know a lot of folks with EDS are like, I don't feel like this is really making a lot of sense to me. And I do understand that EDS is like a spectrum, but a lot of people with EDS are saying this, so I just want to bring it up. Garrick is there. She says to him, the others are on their way. I'm pretty sure the Venin knew we were coming. And she's like, wait, how did you get here so fast? He's trying to blow off the question. He's like, Xaden, he heard that you were charging into danger. He became unreasonable. He used to pride himself on control. He has to when he wields that much power. And I'm telling you, he lost it when he heard that you were crossing the border. He's not himself. And she's like, yeah, but there's no fucking way that you pushed hundreds of miles an hour on a dragon, so how did you get here? Still not answering the question, but that silver-haired Venin girl walks up and she wields lightning. Yes, she does. You heard that correct. The girl who had a silver braid earlier, who's a Venin, also just wielded lightning. She'd wielded lightning, but Venin aren't supposed to have signets, let alone mine. Dread pins my heart to the ground. Wow, very descriptive. She's like, is that any way to thank me for not killing you? The scarlet veins beside her eyes remind me of a masquerade mask topped by the faded tattoo on her forehead, and the red glow around her irises is 10 shades brighter than Jack's. A sage, probably. Maybe even a maven. I'm disappointed you were so easily lured from your wards. Me too! Me and this bitch have that in common. I am also disappointed in that ridiculousness. This is supposed to be a smart woman, and yet Violet Sorengale's just like, actually, I'm gonna go be stupid again. Violet's like, you killed one of my griffin riding friend's family. And she's like, no, only the parents. I spared your friend's brothers. She flicks her wrist and rises Garrick up in the air. Our paths are too intertwined to begin with such hostility. I know, you answer a single question and I'll return the walker to the ground. The walker, as in Windwalker. That's how he got there so fast. I know everything about you, Violet Sorengale. Because of Jack? She shrugs. Which chose you first? The one who gifted you the power of the sky or the Irid? Talking about Violet's dragons. Chapter 11. Some do not believe, but I knew as soon as the cream-robed scholars whispered about the 7th breed in your war college. Irid, Andarna says. Yes, I remember now. That's what my kind are called. I am an Irid scorpion tail. And Violet's like, shut the hell up. You have to fly through the wards. She's not here for me. She clearly wants you. And Andarna's like, I will not abandon you. And I'm like, you both are so stupid. So Venin girl is like, when the shadow wielder comes to us and when you come with him, you will remember that I let you live today and choose me, not Berwin, as your teacher. So now we're setting this up where it's like Violet is a potential pupil of the Venin, and that's why they don't want her dead. They want her to come over there and learn to be a Venin with them. You'd be chained to him, powerless to resist his orders. I'll let you keep both your dragons while giving you what you want most in the world, control and knowledge. This woman's name is Theophany. Taryn swivels his head and snaps at her, but she's picked up by a wyvern. Violet turns to Garrick and is like, she called you a walker. He traveled thousands of miles in minutes, and there's only one way. I've read about to accomplish that, but no one's done it in centuries. You have a second signet, don't you? He says, yeah, so do you. You know, the last time someone wheeled a distance, never said I did. Did you know, I asked Taryn, we do not gossip about our riders. Yeah. Why not? Why is that? I would love to know. Why don't you gossip about your riders? Because I feel like it would be in the best interest of the dragons if you did. Surely it would. So then 20 hours later, she is returning to the courtyard of Basgaeth. And she turns to Andarna and is like, did you seriously tell my brother about what happened? And Andarna's like, I told Marv, his dragon. And Violet says, so much for not gossiping. And I'm like, everything doesn't make any freaking sense. I don't get it. Anyway, a bunch of shadows are manipulating her. What else can you do with those shadows, Lieutenant Ryerson? And she's like, oh, you're mad at me. Anger does not fully describe my current feelings. Boo, boring. So Brennan's looking her over because she did get hurt during the escapade she just went on. 20 hours in the saddle didn't exactly help the swelling, Vi. I have Aron mint with me. I'll have it steeped in milk to help speed the deep healing. You brought Aron mint out of Arisha? Xaden says. Apparently that's important to him. Garrick runs through the doorway and is like, it's not her fault. It literally is. It literally is her fault. She didn't need to go. She was told specifically don't go. And then she walked right into a trap. She's really stupid. And it is in fact her fault. And her dragon could have stopped her and said no, but instead he went anyway. He could have gone himself, but no, he went with her. Someone else could have scouted first, but no, they all went? Like, this is just stupid. Crossing into Paromial was definitely a choice, Garrick says. Violet's like, I can make my own decisions. And Xaden says, in hyphen, again, we all know I love this, well the fuck aware. You disobeyed a direct order, General Atos says. Rhiannon pops in and says, surely you're satisfied now that Sorengale is wounded. We completed your punishment. Violet's like, what I won't do is stand by while civilians die, regardless of what citizenship they hold. And before you ask, every single dragon and griffin agreed. Atos is saying that Brennan shouldn't even be there. Even if Article 2, Section 4 of Basgaeth Code of Conduct didn't allow for menders to be granted access to all areas of campus, which it does, well, I don't answer to you, Atos. Atos says that Xaden can't be there anymore. The leniency you enjoyed this fall will not be extended under my watch. No, my heart sinks will be separated. And again, she's already bonded to two dragons. Taryn and Andarna do not have any obligation to listen to the humans. Why does she need to stay at the War College at this point? What happens if she's leaving and takes her dragons with her? No one can force them to end their bond. She already bonded to them. This is the problem with having these people have this bond with the dragons, because anybody could have joined the War College and then defected with a dragon. Anybody could have done that. And I'm not really sure why Violet's not doing it now, and why Taryn, who's totally has all of his agency and clearly lays out that he doesn't listen to humans, doesn't say, F the shit, we're out. Xaden's like, well, I doubt Scale would agree. Your dragon's always welcome in the Vale. You're simply not welcome in the Quadrant. So basically, Scale can come visit, but Xaden will be without a dragon if she needs to come visit, and he can't come visit Violet anymore. Garrick's like, well, it's been a few centuries since any sitting member of the Scenarium has worn black as a rider, but I'm pretty sure that he commands the Tirish forces now. And I'm like, wait, what are the Tirish forces? Is that not just the infantry for Navarre? Isn't that everybody? Or do the different governors of the different parts of Navarre get to command? Is it like the National Guard? What are we talking about here? What are we doing? Somebody explain. But again, why can't Violet just, if there's Tirish forces, then why can't Violet just join them? What's stopping her? Who's going to tell her and her dragons no? Taryn could eat them. Atos says, my belongings are currently being delivered to the commanding general's quarters, and I have to say there's such a lovely view from the personal office. Xaden tells everybody to get out. Riddick says, good luck, Violet. She says to him, you've never once begrudged my autonomy. He reaches over me, takes my hip in his hands, and yanks my, rhymes with crass, to the edge of the table, turning me to face him. And I'm not going to tolerate you starting now. What are you doing? He grasps the back of my head and slams his mouth against mine. Chapter 12. The insistent heat is threatening to burn her alive. She moans at the shiver of pure want that dances up her spine, driving me higher until we're a tangled mess of tongues and questing hands. Oh my god, it's back! 3 for 3, y'all. In every single book, we get one of these lines where we're a frenzy of questing hands and mouths, a tangle of tongues and teeth, and this time we're a tangled mess of tongues and questing hands. So we're just mishmashing those words together and making a sentence for every single book. What will it be in book 4? Take your guesses down below. I gasp when he targets the spot he knows will turn me molten, then lingers, ensuring my complete meltdown. Fire races through my veins. Oh my god, how much are we going to talk about fire? Xaden, I need you. No, I need you. They are getting hot and bothered, but then he pulls away, retreating 2 precious steps. Scale didn't even tell me. Garrick's dragon told him, it's the same choice you would have made, the choice we did make, and I'm alright. I know that! His voice rises, and his shadows don't jump, they flee. If I were in his presence, I would also flee, because I find him cringy. It was hotter than rage and sharper than fear, and it cut deeper than helplessness, all because I couldn't get to you. I would have channeled every ounce of power beneath my feet without hesitation if it would have landed me at your side. You'd never kill civilians. I would have drained the very earth to its core to keep you safe. Wow, this seems like a guy who definitely should be in charge. Xaden, something is broken between here and here. So they agree that all they can do from now on is kiss. 1 kiss, no hands, fully clothed. That's what you want from me from now on? I want whatever you're able to give, Xaden. You forget that I know your body as well as I know my own, Vi. Your mouth is swollen, your face is flushed, and your eyes are all hazy and leaning more toward green than blue. Oh yes, because we all know that green eyes are a sign of being extra corny. I would know. I have super green eyes. And as we can tell, I am super hot and bothered by this guy. Your pulse is racing, and the way you keep shifting your weight tells me that if I were to strip those pants off you right now, I'd find you more than ready for me. Then that's the line. If it means I don't get to have you in my bed until I find a way to cure you, then I guess that's just extra incentive for me to work quickly, isn't it? Xaden's like, I can't stay on the front lines anymore. I'm one of the most powerful riders, but now I'm also one of the most dangerous. And she's like, hey, Garrick, he's a distance wielder, yeah? Are you pissed I didn't tell you? You don't owe me your friend's secrets. Oh my god, you bitch. All you did in the last book was be like, tell me your friend's secrets or else. Tell me all about the revolution or else. It's my right. I have the right to know. And he's like, if I tell you that information, you could put other people in danger. And the first thing she did was be like, I'm going to tell all my friends about the revolution. You're the worst. Oh, can't stand Violet Sorrowgale. How often do second signets accompany these particular relics? His rebellion relic. Often enough to be sure, Kaori can't possibly have accurate records, but not too completely that anyone questions why I only present with 1. Our dragons came looking for us. They knew what they were doing. So the dragons made a plan and then didn't involve anybody else in it. They only involved the rebellion, but then the other dragons that are against the rebellion are just allowing like their dragon riders to like send assassins? What do you mean? What do you mean? Where is the dragon loyalty at? Is it with the humans? Is it with which humans? Is it with the dragons? I don't know. It depends from chapter to chapter. More like building their own army. Are you serious? They're building their own army, but they're not even in cahoots with each other. Oh my god! More signets equal more power. And she's like, hey, by the way, that Venin I went and talked to, she could wield lightning. I think we're wrong. I don't think they're limited to lesser magics. I think maybe they have signets too. I'm very confused about this because I don't know why this possibly would not have come up sooner. Why on earth would Venin have been fighting with one hand tied behind their backs the entire time? Why? Why would they have done that? They sent all kinds of... What? They fought like a master Venin. He called himself a general. And now, all of a sudden, that guy... He didn't have a signet that presented, but now we're seeing signets? Why would, and why, listen, let's say there's an answer for it. Why are they not thinking this? Why would the Venin not have used their signets previously? Why are they not asking that question? That's the logical question to ask here. If Venin have had signets all along, why have they been hiding them? Or did they just start manifesting? Ask the logical questions, otherwise your characters look stupid. Professor Grady tried to get his own dragon to question Andarna, and that's after reading my report stating everything she remembered about her first 100 years in shell, which, like most dragons late to hatch, is nothing. And because of this, apparently Tarn took off a bunch of that dragon's neck scales, and Andarna left teeth marks on her tail. And I'm like, wait, so dragons are getting so why are those dragons siding with like Professor Grady and General Melgren? Can we please hear from those dragons? Can we get a quorum of the Imperium? Can we work this stuff out together instead of just leaving it to the humans? Why are we even doing that? Violet goes to see Jack, who looks like absolute dog water. The pallid skin of his face has sunken into his skull, reminding me more of a corpse than a human. She hands him a imbued knife or something. No, not a knife. It's something imbued with something to give him a little bit of power, a little bit of juice to keep him going. It's imbued with enough power to keep you alive for at least another week. Answer a few questions for me and it's yours. And if I'd rather meet Malik? Does your kind meet Malik? Does their kind meet Malik? Can we get a little more information about the Venin? Can you sense each other? Initiates, as Sims, were all traceable to one another, but the Great Hall could fill with sages and mavens, and I'd never know, neither would you. Okay, what about dragons? Can dragons sense them? Makes you wonder who's been channeling here for years, doesn't it? Who's been trading information for power? Ask me why only initiates bleed. Do you have to be taught? She asks him. Not if you're already experienced with the flow of magic. Someone who has never wielded would require instruction, but a dragon rider or a griffin flyer? Power should be accessible to everyone strong enough to wield it, not just who they see fit. You conveniently see me as the villain, but you're bonded to two. So Venin think that dragons are evil? Are villains? How would that work then with that one girl, Theophany, the Venin girl, wanting Violet to come be with her in Venin land, assumedly, and bring her dragons with her? Do you know their plan? We're not as stupid as you assume. Information is need to know. What a waste of a question. How do you cure yourself once you channel from the source? There's no cure because magic does not negotiate, and we do not wish to be cured. She tosses the alloy his way, his cheeks plump and fill with color. Did you cry for Ryerson when they strapped you to the chair and watched your blood fill the cracks between the stones on its way to the drain? I only ask because I swear I can feel it when I lie on the floor, all your pain singing to me like a lullaby. That look right there is why I chose to answer your questions, for the satisfaction of us both knowing that I can still cut you and I don't even have to lift a blade. In his cell, all the stones are like desiccated gray stones drained of any and all magic. Now, I'm a little bit confused about desiccated stone. I guess, and again, maybe I'm thinking too literally about this, but so any stone can channel because it's from the earth. So I guess I don't know. I don't really understand. It's like it's sucking the life out of the stone or anything that's naturally occurring. So is there more life than in plants and stuff than there is in stone? Probably yes. I don't know. Chapter 13. She talks to her friends and says that Jack said we could basically be surrounded by Venin and never know it. She's talking to Rhiannon, and Rhiannon is like, oh, me and my girlfriend broke up. Leadership is hard on both our schedules. We're together when we have time, but it's not like we're seeing other people. But you and Ryerson bicker like you've been married 50 years and neither of you wants to do the dishes. Haha. Yep. Yep. And then it makes fun of the fact that they have the same fight over and over again. I believe it's Riddick who's like, and it's always the same fight. I'll trust you to stop keeping secrets. It's my secretive nature that attracted you. Why can't you just stay out of harm's way for 5 fucking minutes? I'm like, you can't just make fun of the annoying thing that you do. You have to actually stop doing it. Just because everybody else finds it annoying doesn't make it endearing. It doesn't make it something that you should stop, you should stop writing it. Just stop doing it. Do something else. It's been 3 books. Do a new thing. And she's like, married. I'm interested in the future, or I guess I'm not against it in the future, but I'm more focused on living till graduation. And this is only here because we're gonna find out at the end that they're married. Great. Not like the fate of the world rests on you finding whatever's left of the Irids. Do you think it's short for iridescent? And the rest of them say yes. They go talk to Jacinia. Sawyer is there. He has a crush on Jacinia. He's been learning to sign because Jacinia signs. Jacinia's like, your leg, I would have just come to you. And he says, no, I wanted to be here. He says it in sign. He's still learning though. Jacinia's brought 6 books that might be of use to them in their search for information. She's being punished by the scribe quadrant, and the only thing she's allowed to help with is looking for research. I barely finished translating Lyra's journal and now have 600 years of personal accounts to read through. I'm not some kind of oracle high off whatever they're serving in the temple that day. I'm an extremely educated scribe, so treat me as much. She says that Grady has requested tomes about the Emerald Sea exploration in the north, meaning that they're looking to possibly go north into the Emerald Sea to go search for the Irids. I don't even know what we're missing. I was reading General Hadow's journal yesterday, and a whole section of pages is ripped out after he notes having been on my notes got messed up there. Something about an isle supporting the second Crovlin uprising. The second Crovlin uprising was supported by an isle kingdom? But that was in the 400s, right? And it was assumed that Cordon sent soldiers. We severed all communication with most isles after they sided with Poromiel around 206, and they in turn killed every emissary we sent in the centuries that followed. So how would General Cadow know that? And the only scribe that they know that could have had that answer was Violet's father. All his research, the work he had yet to publish, is now really hard to access. I'd been so focused on getting out of Mom's quarters with her journals after she died that I'd completely forgot about what my father had left hidden. How? You're supposed to be smart! Hard to access as in, we'd need Dane to betray his father. So then they have to go to class, because remember they're still in Murder U. They learned that every 2 weeks they'll be rotating to go to Arisha for rune training, and they also say, we regret to inform you that a crucial piece of information surfaced during printing of something, and therefore is not included. It has now been confirmed by 3 different sources that high-level Venin can and do wield signets. Wow, how incredibly convenient that this did not come up until this book. You can and should expect to face a dark wielder with the same abilities as your friends, your squad mates, and yourselves. And also, they decide that death is no longer an acceptable outcome when you face your classmates. The days of setting your scores on the mat are over. We need each and every one of you to survive graduation. Bitch! This couldn't have been a rule sooner. Now Murder U isn't Murder U? Oh, okay. How convenient. And another new class they'll be adding on will be a hands-on approach to prepare you for Signet against Signet combat. Okay, no, that's fine. Eastern Wing has temporarily loaned us their most powerful rider to start your instruction. Guess who? Xaden stands next to Professor Cowrie in the doorway, casually leaning against the frame with his arms crossed. He found a way to stay within the wards by teaching. Oh, shit. Article 8, Section 1 of the Basgaiath Code of Conduct. They can't bone anymore because he's her teacher now. Great! I think our relationship just ended. Chapter 14. Though flyers only wield lesser magic, in my vast experience with the Northern Wing, they are formidable opponents in both mind work and hand-to-hand. So, like, they do have signets, but it's just mind work signets. Like, Kat's very specifically got a mind-working signet that she allows her to manipulate people's emotion. Chapter 14 starts by saying, I'm fine. This is fine. No, I make that joke in text with my friends because I'm a millennial woman of 30. The book doing it isn't funny. She talks to Dane and she's like, hey, I need something left in my parents' quarters before he died. It's nothing that needed to be burned or anything like that. And Dane's like, oh, it's research? It's hidden, and the quarters of Basgaiath's commanding general are warded so only their line by blood or marriage can pass through, and now that bloodline is no longer mine. And I'm like, it doesn't make sense that this smart girl, whose entire personality is being the smart one, the smartest one, the only one who's going to be able to figure out how to cure the venin, right? Just forgot her dad's research. It would have made more sense if she couldn't get it out, where, like, you know, somebody walked in when she was about to grab it, and then that's when, you know, they changed over everything. Dane's dad became, you know, the owner of the quarters, and she's like, I didn't have time to get the research out. Dane, I need your help. But instead, she just forgot. That's the answer we're getting from the smartest girl in the room? You'd be better off asking my father yourself. I'm more concerned that he might not give it to me. He mentioned last year that he wanted it, and I'm scared he'll keep it for himself, or that he and Markham will redact the information. How are these people still allowed to be in charge? What are we doing? So you want me to help you steal it? Then he turns to Xaden and says, Professor Ryerson. Dane's tone isn't exactly respectful. Xaden's like, can we have a word in private? Not a good idea. I'm sure I've had worse ones. You're now a professor. Oh shit, Dane says. Article 8, Section 1 of the Code of Conduct. Bodhi chimes in saying, wait, you two broke up? Violet says yes. Xaden says no. I'm surprised he took her saying yes well. If you're our new professor, then the code applies. Xaden waits half a second before grabbing the strap of my pack and tugging me into another room. You're already the deadliest here, so it's not like I have to worry about grading you fairly. This changes nothing. We live by the codex. I live by you. When have I ever given a fuck about the codex or the code of conduct? I'm not sure. Which begs the question, what were you doing all this time until you met Violet, right? You were on a trajectory, and then you met Violet, and now you're on a different trajectory. Why did all of those goals suddenly stop? And what exactly were they, right? What was the goal before you met Violet? And then suddenly it's like, well, I met this hot chick and diverted. What are we doing? This is like what my mother-in-law always accused me of doing to my husband, except his goals are the same. He did the same thing that he always planned to. He has a good job. He works in tech. He always planned to do that. He has a job with healthcare. That was the goal. I didn't change any of that, but what were Xaden's plans, right? What was Xaden's plan all along? And Violet came in and now he's like, I don't care about any of this. I don't care. We'll leave. We could leave. I don't care. And leave everybody to die? So you didn't care all along? So your goals, the stakes meant nothing? Instead, it's now I live by you? What did you live for before? I am yours and you are mine, and there's no law or rule in this world or the next that will change that. Kaori thinks we can get an exemption. I just have to ask Panchek here in a few minutes. He got worse only being on the border for a week, and she's like, we have to keep you here because you get worse when you're on the border. He channeled again. The worst part is I don't even remember reaching for the source or taking the power during the battle. It was simply there. If Sigale hadn't, she stopped him. She spoke to me for the first time. Yelled is a more accurate term, and I snapped out of it, but the damage was done. I let you down. General Atos shows up and says, Kaori mentioned you might be in here, so I thought I'd handle the awkward business of you inevitably asking for an exemption to the Code of Conduct so you don't embarrass yourself in front of Colonel Panchek. I'm formally requesting an exemption in regard to Article 8, Section 1 on the grounds that it is a previously existing relationship and the post is temporary. Denied. I'll obey Melgren's order and give you the position, even though I think there are writers better suited for it, but make no mistake, Ryerson, I don't want you here. Pardon or no pardon, title or not, I won't forget that you murdered the Vice Commandant in cold blood a few short months ago and ripped this institution apart. Your attachment to Cadet Sorengale gives me the perfect excuse to kick you off my campus, and I will joyfully take it should you break the Code of Conduct, Professor. It may be General Melgren's army, but it's my school. Do you understand? Understand you're an asshole? Absolutely, Xaden holds up a finger. Wow, what a bad boy. And insulting you isn't against the Code of Conduct. I checked. And they're like, well, we'll just have to sneak around. Sneak around to do what? All you guys can do is kiss. All you can do is a little smoochy smooch because he's Venin. He a bad boy. And Violet's like, by the way, just so you know who to hate, Xaden didn't kill Varish, I did. And Dane's like, well, to Violet says, well, I mean, I struck the final blow. Like, I killed Varish. Dane's like, by the way, my dad will be in Caldir next week, so we'll get your father's research then. Now, when they said this, I thought that this was going to be like something that was a big deal, right? And instead, it's just like, he shows back up with the research. It was not a problem at all. And I'm like, then why did we even bother? Why do we even bother with this? What was the point of this? So Xaden has to teach a class because he's professor now. This just got Gothicana real quick. So they're like making plans for leaving to go do the, search. Xaden's like, why are there no shield signets? Clearly we'll be out behind the wards unless you think there's an entire den hiding within Navarre's borders that the Empyrean doesn't know about. And somebody's like, well, you were able to hide one because, Arisha had an entire den, which begs the question, again, why didn't the Empyrean say anything? Because it even says right here, thinking the Empyrean wasn't aware for 6 years tells me all I need to know about where you and your dragon's priorities are. Are you absolutely fucking kidding me? So they're told, well, we're waiting to hear about a particular shield wielder being a part of this. We're just waiting on a response. In this meeting, Violet says to him, the casual flex of power is pretty hot. I'm barely keeping my hands to myself as it is. If you knew how often I think about sneaking into your room. God, that voice really messes me up. Professor Grady says we've been given 6 months to find the 7th breed, the rainbow dragons. The Scenarium, the council, has ordered that we report back between searching potential sites to keep them informed. And during this conversation, Violet is mind-speaking to Xaden, interrupting the flow of the conversation by saying things like, I miss your hands. Basing our operation at the coastline gives us access to magic, plus the Emerald Sea is largely unexplored. The last known communication we have with any Isle Kingdom is Deverelli, Violet says. From what I've read, the Merchant Isle trades in more than goods. If there's information, it might be there. And they're like, well, the Deverelli will kill us if we go there. If the dragons were on the Deverelli Island, one of them would have bragged about it or used them in an assault. Records of the Second Croveland Uprising have been ripped out of General Cadau's journal, and Justinia thinks that an officer hinted that an Isle Kingdom was involved, Hundreds of years after we severed contact, General Atos asked me about my father's research on the subject last year, specifically on feather tails. If my father had wanted Atos or Markham to have that information, he would have left the information in his archives office. So again, we are saying that Atos and Markham and Melgren all cannot be trusted to have research done by a scribe on feather tails, which are baby dragons. A scribe did not think he could trust them with that. Why on earth then would the dragons that are linked to those people then be willing to be bonded to people that cannot be trusted with information about feather tails? I'm just going to keep asking until somebody gives me a sufficient answer. I've been asking for 3 books now. Anyways, now Violet gets escorted to and fro around the school so that if anybody catches her and Xaden canoodling, that they'll get reported. Chapter 15. Infantry has an outdoor amphitheater. I don't know how, because the map does not denote such a thing, but okay. Anyways, the Xaden is now going to teach a class on fighting. I've always loved him in uniform, but there's something about seeing him in tight-fitted sparring gear, swords strapped across his back, that makes me instantly wish this was a private teaching lesson. Her friends are like, hey, we're dragging Sawyer out. Do you want to go out? And Violet's like, Xaden, let's go out. He says, I hope you have a great time, but watching you across the pub sounds like torture. I think we had more time together when I was stationed at Samara. Listen, I have to say this in a censored way, okay? They can mind speak to each other. We have 3 spicy scenes in this book. One of the things that I've complained about consistently is that there is no mix-up, right? There is no like variation in the spice. Now, if we're gonna do the they can't touch each other thing, you could make it hot, right? You could make it so that they send memories to each other, right? They also could just mind speak and do basically what is phone spice through their own heads. That would be something different. That would be cute. But I guess just like phone spice in a fantasy world is not cute enough. We have to have the longing leading up to the exact same spice scene that we did twice previously. Once previously. How many spice scenes have we done so far? One. We're just going to repeat them later instead of taking the opportunity to do phone spice. Why? You had a chance! And also, like, flicking the bean is not done enough in books, right? Like, normalizing that, especially in adult books, I don't feel like we flick the bean enough. Why didn't we take the opportunity? Anyway, Xaden decides that he is going to teach these students, and one of them says, we're just saying that we're not sure someone who graduated less than a year ago makes the best teacher. His name is Lauren Yashi, a cocky 3rd year with bright purple locks, one of the best fighters in their wing. They've earned whatever Xaden is about to dish out. He's a metallurgist, so he spars with Xaden, and he asks Xaden, are you going to draw a weapon? Xaden says, we'll see. Riddick says, I'm either completely in love with your boyfriend or utterly terrified of him. And Violet's like, he's not my boyfriend. Stop, this is so stupid. That's far too casual a term for what we are. Great. Well, by the end, it's just going to be your husband, so why don't you just call it fiance and bridge that gap now? I never need to draw a sword because I am the weapon. I'm just good with blades for the fun of it, Xaden says. I want to give you my edge. I want you to learn not just from me, but from one another. I'll help expose the weaknesses in your signet so that when you come up against a dark wielder with such a power, you will have already practiced how to defeat them. I'm just not really convinced also myself that Xaden is the person to do this just because he wields shadows. Like, how is he specifically going to help somebody like, I don't know, Rhiannon, who's a retriever, to retrieve better? Like, how would he help her? Like, okay, a metallurgist, he's good with swords and he has shadows so he can, fight. But like, how specifically is he the one to teach everybody about signet on signet combat? Why? Why did he get chosen for that? Like, that 3rd year had a point. They ask, what about the ones who can't wield signets? Talking about the Griffin Riders. Kat says, we're far from helpless. You can try your water wielding on me, but I'll already be in your head, turning your own emotions against you. Chapter 16, Violet and Xaden spar, and it says, let's see how you do in the dark. Shadows fill the mat. Now, I love shadow magic, so this very specifically appeals to me. And this scene in particular, I liked. I know, it's shocking. You're mind blown. What? No, how can this be? I like shadow magic, and also they're about to kiss, and I think that filling a room with shadows so that you can kiss so that nobody was watching is like objectively cute. That's objectively adorable. I'm sorry, it's just a fact. Now, do I hate these people because one of them is really stupid and one of them is broody and dumb and doesn't make any sense? Yes, but I am a sucker for a shadow kiss. It also tries to explain Xaden's magic, so it says, I can wield from anything that casts a shadow, but no one knows the strongest threads are always my own. If you can sort through them, feel their difference, you'll be able to track where I am in the darkness. Anyway, they spar, they kiss in the shadows. It was cute. I liked it. We also get more of a effort to see people interacting with their religious ideas here. So like Ree says how is temple to Marin, whose family was murdered minus her brothers. Her brothers are going off to live with Rhiannon's family as a foster family. I believe Amari will watch over my brothers in Arisha. I can't thank your family enough for taking them in. And it says, your temples to Malik and Dune are disproportionately large compared to the other gods here. Now, I think that that's great because we're starting to understand the differences in religious belief from region to region. I just wish that we had dived in, like, this is very surface level, and I wish that we had done more. Because again, like, I think that if they're just fighting over that material, like, it could have been, we could have brought the religion into it and made it a stronger case for why these countries were at war, but then we'd have less of a case for them to band together, I guess. I mean, depending on what Rebecca would have done with it, which consistently proves to be a whole lot of nothing. Riddick says, I personally prefer Xenal, which is the god of luck. You can get through any situation with luck, which is a good point. Violet seems to be extremely lucky. I'm surprised she doesn't go and pay more attention to that particular god. She tends to talk about Amari. Once in a while she brings up Malik. But Violet is getting through a lot of situations, and I would feel like, oh, well, if there's a god of luck, then maybe the god of luck is on my side and I need to like pay tribute to them more often. Otherwise, my luck's gonna run out. Unfortunately, Violet never goes to temple as like thus far. Dane says, all right, I'm working on getting the research out. I need you to trust me enough to retrieve the research and bring it out myself, preferably tomorrow night since my father will be gone. I don't know why we keep bringing this up because then he just does, and then that problem is over with. Chapter 17 starts with a recovered correspondence from her dad to her. I meant to prepare you, but only had time for half the lessons you need. Half the history, half the truth, and now time runs short. I failed Brennan the day I watched him walk the parapet, failed Mira when I could not stop her from following, but I fear my death will fail you. Your mother and I trust no one, and neither can you. Now, the idea that her mother trusted no one, I still feel like these books were written where it's like she wasn't sure if she wanted to make the mom evil or not until like midway through this second book. It would have made more sense for her mom to fake her death and send her off somewhere if she wanted to protect her, but okay. In chapter 17, she's talking to Sloane, which is Liam's sister who hated her for most of the second book. Talking to me is at least a start. She's like, well, I killed your mom. You were there. I feel bad about it, but also I don't feel bad about it because of the stuff with my family, and also I wanted the wards up. Like, I could have saved her technically, but I wanted it to happen. I wouldn't trade you for any wards, Sloane. My mother made the choice she had to. You were the tool, but she gave her own life. And of course, Violet is just good. Uncomplicated goodness once again. Now that we're in a new chapter, Dane's like, I have the information that you requested. I have your father's research. No problem. A smile spreads across my face. Not only did he come through, but he did in a way that no one potentially watching either of us would suspect. But it's a leather-bound notebook, and there's a 6-letter lock. And if she gets the answer wrong, then there are 6 vials of ink that will pour inside of the journal and ruin all of it. So she has to like Indiana Jones her way into getting into this thing. I pick up the scrap of parchment Dad has stashed in a roll beneath the lock and read his formal handwriting again. First love is irreplaceable. What the hell is that supposed to mean? It means that the answer is somebody's first love. It's very simple, actually. It's obviously Lilith, right? Riddick says. Both Lilith and Violet are too obvious. Who was your first love? Oh, that's not happening. My father couldn't stand the first guy I really dated and never knew about the second. So who is the first guy she dated? It's the prince, whose name is also 6 letters, by the way. Her and Xaden are getting a little too hot and bothered, but they're in public. He says, you're gonna be the death of me. And then in walks Halden, her ex-boyfriend and the crown prince. She tells Xaden you need to help Auric hide because he's the other prince, and you know his dad's fucking looking for him. His Royal Highness Prince Halden. If Halden ever realizes that Xaden is the reason his twin isn't breathing, well, he won't be as understanding as Auric. And I'm like, so if we go back to the beginning, of this story of Fourth Wing, right? We could have made it so that Violet hated Xaden for no reason, right? What we could have done was make it so that her ex-boyfriend, who had a twin brother, who died at Xaden's hands because they were in Murder You together and you're allowed to do that, she could have hated Xaden because he killed her ex-boyfriend's twin brother. But instead we just ignored that Violet had an ex at all and was just like, well, Violet needs an ex. We need to make it related to what's going on here. We need to bring in the royal family. We'll just put those pieces together. But then when doing that, it leaves out the fact that this doesn't really make sense for the beginning of the book. What are you doing at Basgaya? That's not exactly alumni weekend. You aren't going to ask how I've been, says Halden. My brother's missing, you know. Seriously though, no hello, not even a compliment on the tailoring of my uniform or the fresh haircut. I'm heartbroken, Vi. You'd have to own a heart to break it. The only hair I remember is your professor's covering your face when I walked in on her riding you. I cheated, but you have to remember, I was still suffering from the loss of my twin brother. And here I thought you'd thank me for offering to step in and agree with you in regard to your upcoming mission. Grady is taking too long and has yet to present a clear path that satisfies my father. I like this option. So it's like a letter that says that King Cortland of Deverelli, who's the people that hate them, and yet they have a bunch of Deverelli silk, and I'm not sure how they're getting Deverelli silk if the Deverelli hate them, but that's neither here nor there. King of Deverelli has agreed to a single meeting, noble blood only, but only if they bring the Emelian citrine, which is a lesser magic amplifier worn by one of the first members of the First Drift. If you're willing to retrieve it, I'm willing to order Grady to change courses. So Violet wants to go one direction, Professor Grady wants to go another direction, and Halden is saying he can tell Professor Grady to go a different direction if she retrieves the citrine that then they would use to bargain with the Deverelli. If you want to go, I'll step in on your behalf. I owe you at least that. And title overpowers rank every day. Title overpowers rank, then Violet and Xaden could just get married now and not be under General Atos's thumb, because she would then be the Duchess of Tyrandor. Yes? So wouldn't she then outrank the guy? Isn't that how that works? I don't know, I'm just spitballing here. I'm just asking the logical questions. Tell me, is it true what they say? You and Ryerson? If you're asking if I'm in love with him, then the answer is wholeheartedly yes. But we're adhering to the code of conduct in the way that you never bothered to. You can report that to your father. I wasn't asking for my father, Vi. I was asking for me. I never told you I was sorry, and I should have. If you're not with Ryerson, I am in love with him. I haven't so much as thought about you in years. Don't chase just because you like a challenge. You'll lose. Anyone who's ever dated a dragon rider knows their first priority, their first love, is their dragon. Once you accept that, another man hardly feels like a challenge. Oh my god, look, it's the hint for the answer to the riddle in a different conversation. We did it, guys! Tell me you don't let your non-boyfriend control you. Allow me to apologize properly the way I should have 3 years ago. He lifts a hand towards my hair but never makes it. Shadows blast through the wards and hit Halden in the chest. Xaden just shadow blasted the guy. Great idea. Wise choice. Chapter 18. Xaden gets away with this by saying that a first year almost made a lethal blow to Halden and he saved him. And then they get into a verbal altercation where Xaden says she really honestly hasn't thought about you, at least not since she set eyes on me. Yes, as the reader, I can confirm that we've been seeing inside of her head on the regular, and not a one time has this guy ever been brought up. Not even once, including when Auric in the last book talks about his brother being killed by Xaden. She doesn't think, yeah, and I was your other brother, the twin of the guy who died. It never came up. Why? I believe because Rebecca hadn't thought of it yet. Your ex should come up. Xaden's ex comes up all the time. And like, she was thinking about, like, when she was attracted to Dane in book 1, she's like, I've slept with other people. And Dane probably would have been jealous knowing that she was sleeping with, dating the Crown Prince, but this just never came up because it didn't exist until this book happened. Anyway, she realizes that the first love of someone is always their dragon, so her dad's password for his journal is her mom's first love, which was her mom's dragon. Now, what happened to her mom's dragon? I don't know at this point. It has not said yet. Rhiannon says, you never mentioned you were in a relationship with the prince. Never seemed important. Never seemed important? Yeah, sure. No, that makes sense. My father's world rotated on the axis of my mother, and they didn't meet until their 3rd year. Her first real love would have been her dragon, and she was irreplaceable. Our entire family's happiness rested on her health and survival. And she's like, so if this doesn't work, I need you to retrieve the ink. Rhiannon's like, I think I could probably grab enough that at least all of your father's work won't be ruined, but it's fine. Nothing happens. She's able to retrieve the ink, no problem. A History of the Second Crowland Uprising, draft by Lieutenant Colonel Asher Sorengale. Dear Violet, it is my most sincere hope that you are reading this by my side, laughing at the glorious mess that is a first draft, but I fear that may not be the case. If I now walk alongside Malak with your brother, then guard this manuscript carefully. But if the worst has happened and your mother has joined us, then you must protect the knowledge with your very life. Within these pages, you'll find my careful study of the Second Crowland Uprising, but my daughter, remember what I taught you about the history. It is simply a collection of stories, each influenced by those that happened before and steering the ones to come. I don't understand why her mom didn't just give her this. He's like, if the worst has happened and your mother has joined us, why would it need to be that her mom died in order for her to get this? Why didn't her mom just give it to her? I wrote this study so it could be read by others but understood by you. If time is sweet, peruse at leisure. You'll find the connection between the uprising and the pursuit of Feathertails to be both alarming and enlightening, but if time has indeed run out and you seek the weapon to defeat those you've only learned about through lore, then abandon your robes and ride for Corden. You have always struggled with Crovelish, but I made sure Dane would be capable should you need him, should he not choose to cross the parapet this summer. Too late. If he follows in the footsteps of his father, you must find the strength to let go of your affection for him. From Corden, book passage to Deverelli, you'll be safe beyond the reach of magic there, and quietly seek the merchant Narelle Anselm. Take her the rarest item you possess. Be sure it's truly exceptional to be given what you need. Do not send another in your stead. Should you travel under the banner of Navarre, beware their king. He bears grudges and speaks only in profit. I'm so sorry this falls to you, my brightest light. Trust only Mira. How would he have known a merchant in Deverelli? Seek the weapon. Did he know about Andarna? About the rest of her kind? At least we're asking some logical questions. I relay the information to Tarrant and Andarna. Now, I don't know why this information was not relayed to her mom's dragon. If her mom was in on it, which it sounds like maybe, then why didn't her mom's dragon just relay that information to Violet through her dragons? Okay. There is no magic beyond the continent. It's why the dragons remain. Terrence says, it's surprising that the Irids left our shores. Xaden stands at the threshold of the door, his hands gripping the frame. What are you doing? Did you love him? Someone is going to see you. Did you love him? I have to know. I can handle it, but I have to know. I'm jealous of the armor that holds you when I can't, the sheets on your bed that caress your skin every night, and the blades that feel your hands. So when the prince of our realm walks into my classroom and starts talking to the woman I love with what can only be considered intense familiarity, and then has the audacity to ask her out right in front of me, naturally, I'm gonna get jealous. Did you love him, Violet? You have to tell me. Not the way I love you. You loved him. I was 18. We were only together about 7 months, a little before his conscription date, until December. I was infatuated and enamored, and at the time, the rush of utter beguilement was what I knew of love, so yes, I loved him. And he's going with us. I caught that too. It's really hard for me to see you anywhere near Cat. I never loved Cat. This is so goofy. They're making out again. His hands are full of my rear, and I'm up against his chest. Stop me if I cross the line. Stop yourself, or don't do this at all. Madness. This need between us is always the sweetest madness. See, I have before read a book where we have a teacher and a student making out and saying the word madness, and I'm scarred for life from it. So let's not do it again. He is the craving I'll never sate, the rush I'll never get enough of, only him. Xaden is those Camel Burst menthols that we all loved in high school. Was it Camel? The ones with the little poppy of menthol? You know what I'm talking about? He pins her hands above her head with his shadows, says, "Fuck, your skin is so damn soft." They're just kissing. He says, it's still just a kiss. Please have mercy and say something, anything that distracts me from how damn good you feel in my arms. And I'm like, okay, I have an idea. How do I say this without getting demonetized? You are both in a room, okay? I have read a book that does this very scene. We can't touch each other, but we can touch ourselves while we're talking dirty to each other, okay? If this book can do it, and this is a novella, by the way, if this book can do it, why can't this book? Instead, we did the same spicy scene 8 times over 3 books. We could have just said, we'll just mutually, go to town while not touching each other. Therefore, we avoid the risk of Xaden channeling from her. But also, we have to go back to the idea that if it's just his hands, which we proved earlier that it's not his eggplant, why can't we just tie his hands up? Why not? I don't see why not. But no, we have to do the same conversation. Stop me. I can't touch you. Then don't touch her. We can't think of another way around this? Are we really that uncreative? There were ways to make this hotter and to make it make sense, both at the same time. Anyway, they stop. My dad left me a letter. He wants me to go to Deverelli. We'd have to go under the pretense of searching for Andarna's kind, and I think that's what he was alluding to, but I could be wrong. I have to read the research. Searching the Isles means we need the audience with a king, which requires leaving the wards to get an artifact for the king of Deverelli and help from Halden, so it's not that easy a choice. It is. If my dad left me a letter, you can tell me all the ways it's going to be shitty and I'll still say let's go. The artifact is in occupied territory. And if I ask you to stay behind all cozy and safe while I go get it, and she's like, no. I'm gonna go get it. Chapter 19. The gem given to you upon graduation from Cliffsbane should always be worn close to the heart, but if you have not mastered your control, it will only amplify your downfall. Chapter 3. The cannon of the flyer. So this is some sort of like power magnifier for flyers that they're going to get. So they have a riot of 8, including her sister. Andarna wants to go, but they're like, Theophany, the Venin lady, is literally hunting you. You can't go. I can burn Venin, Andarna says. I've told you a dozen times. First fire burns the hottest, which could explain the phenomenon. So her fire was her first fire and it was super hot and she burnt a Venin to a crisp, but it might be that she might not consistently be able to do that. Now, why they haven't been training her, I have no idea. I literally do not know. In fact, this brings the question, do dragons train with each other? And if not, why not? Why wouldn't they want to train their young? But they only have about 12 hours before she is going to start feeling pain from distance from being away from Andarna. So they get to this city and Aura Banehaven, who's been a pain in the ass before, has a flint strike device where she can wield fire. So she has to it's like the guy from Red Queen where he has to have the flint strike, like a flint in order to start a flame, in order to manipulate. It's also like from the Grishaverse, right? I think, is it in the Grishaverse that you need to, or do you just start a fire? We didn't start the fire. Basically, Aura is scared and she's like she's like using her magic. And Violet's like, that is super dangerous. You could start a fire. But here's the thing. The dragons couldn't go into this city because this city is a Promish city that was specifically made so that the dragons could not traverse the streets. Now, it doesn't really make any sense to me because the dragons could just fly in. There's no other dragon preventative. They could just fly in and burn the motherfucker down. So if you were worried about that, then what would make most sense is for you to create a dragon-proof city, which would be made of like stone, especially a very particular kind of stone. But they were also worried about the Venin, so you would also want to create a city that is like Venin-proof and dragon-proof. Being worried about the streets of the city the size of it does not make any sense. So like the dragons had to park like they're buses. So they're not immediately available. But it doesn't make sense if you are worried about dragons, but you're making a city that can go up in flames in a second, which it does. So Aura, for some reason, is like really scared, despite having all the same training as Violet, is just randomly like, I'm really scared and I'm gonna be ready to wield like in a second. That is an unhealthy, mission dangerous amount of fear. Put them down, away, gloves on. You need to remind yourself that wielding is the worst possible thing we could do. Mira says that she finds the stone that they need in order to trade with info with the Deverelli. Aura gets scared and fire sparks and spews from her hand like dragon flame and engulfs the doorway. Professor Grady just happened to be walking through the door at the same time. He is up in flames. My heart drops to the ground as house after house catches fire spreading down the street. The land, the buildings, the very wood they're built with may be drained of magic, but they go up like kindling. Why would the Promish have made a town built of wood if they were concerned about the dragons? Now, okay, it's desiccated wood, so it's kindling. But if it were desiccated stone, it would not have been Venin-proof, sure, but it would have been dragon-proof, which was the point of making it so that the dragons could not traverse the streets. This doesn't make any sense. A Promish town that made their buildings so dragons could not get in, but they made them with materials that then light up in flames in seconds when they know that the Venin could come drain the town of life. So they've set themselves up for the utmost failure. So Professor Grady is dead. The whole town's up in flames. Xaden's somehow putting out fires with shadows, which I do not understand how that fucking works. But there's no earthly way to keep up. No earthly earthly way? No earthly way, huh? So they need to get to the town square, which is where the dragons are. Dragons can't fit down these streets. We have to make it to the square or we're dead. Yeah, dragons can't fit down the streets because the Promish made it that way. They can light it up on fire though. Why would the dragons even bother to go down the streets? They would just light it on fire. Taryn is like, hey, we're not the only wings in the sky. The wyvern are here. Oreg, who started all this gets taken by a wyvern. Someone named Henson says, damn, they got here fast. All right, Ryerson, you're up. And Violet's like, oh, they got here fast. That's all she has to say? Violet's like, you need to pick, to Taryn, you need to pick me and Xaden up. And he says, I am not a horse. And she says, take us both, with periods after. And I'm like, why would you not? Well, of course you're not a horse. Guess what, mother? This is your mate's rider. And if you don't pick him up and he dies, your mate's going to be in pain. Why would you even bother arguing at this point? I'm not a horse. What? Who cares? You don't want your mate to be in pain. That should be foremost in your mind. This doesn't make any fucking sense. It was just there to be like, oh, Taryn hates Xaden. Taryn loves Sigale. So the most, what would make sense in this moment would for him to be like, I'll pick him up, but just know I'm only doing this for Sigale. Not, I'm not a horse. We know, but you could have made it known, I'm only doing this for the sake of Sigale because she wouldn't want you to die. Otherwise, I would leave you because I don't give a shit about humans. That would make sense. But for him to even hesitate when Sigale's mental or physical health is on the line makes absolutely no fucking sense. Anyway, they did get the stone, but the stone has also been drained of life. A thumb-sized stone, I'm guessing, was once the color of citrine, now rests in its setting, cracked, hazy, and smoke-hued. If the king doesn't accept that, then this will all have been for nothing. And Mira's like, this was sitting next to the necklace. And it's a note that says, Violet, just a reminder that while I want you to come of your own free will, I'm capable of taking you whenever I wish. Why do you not ask me for the answers you so desperately seek? And it's a note from Theophany. Either she knows I'm looking for Andarna's kind, or she knows I'm looking for a cure. And Violet's like, oh, she knew we'd be here. Yeah, this is the second time. Duh! Like, just assume already that she already knows this stuff. She knew that Garrick was a windwalker. She's ahead of you. Just assume that she is 10 steps ahead. Whatever you do, just assume that she already knows because she's already made that clear to you beforehand. Hello! So at this point, with the whole, oh, we made a town that dragons can't traverse, but we didn't make the town fireproof. We made it out of wood. This is the moment where I said it doesn't matter that we're trying to do better with characterization and the religious stuff, making sure that we, bring up that Violet gets harmed and there are consequences that just logically make sense in, the character that we've created in her. And even the stuff with like taking away the girl hate between her and Kat for the most part. And even like the cute little shadow kiss. All of this doesn't matter because that just ruined it for me. That was so stupid. That was such a series of stupidity back to back to back that I can't even. Of course Theophany knows you're going to be there. Of course the town shouldn't be made out of wood. Of course Taryn should always be like, all right, I have to pick up Xaden. I'm not going to argue about it because I care about Sigale first and foremost. Like, of course. But instead, the book treats this as this is like not information that has been very explicitly told. This is so stupid. So like, I had hope. I thought this was getting better. There were moments when I genuinely thought it was getting better, and then it didn't. And it got, in parts, worse. So that's where we're at with Fourth Wing. Wait, no, sorry. So that's where we're at with Onyx Storm. That was Onyx Storm part 1 of the deep dive. At this point, I once again have more questions than answers. We'll be heading into part 2 and then part 3, which I think unfortunately are going to be significantly longer than this video, which that's going to be so fun to edit. Oh goodness, can't wait. But at this point, I'm really disappointed because it seems like an active effort was like almost made and then we just sort of gave up and then we did more stupid stuff and I just don't understand why. What are we doing? Like, why isn't anybody else asking these questions like in the process of drafting these books? I'm really disappointed. That was, and I understand now why the fans of this series are starting to drop off. And especially when you take into like the spicy scene account, I'm like, okay, so they can't touch each other. And like, okay, you can't get creative. This man, Xaden, who's supposed to be like a spice god, can't get creative? Are you for real? Is this a real thing that's happening? How incredibly like disappointing and uncreative. I just don't understand. You could have an entire scene where it's just the shadows doing the work. Like if they can put out fires, they can start them, if you know what I'm saying. But instead we just are like, oh, I can't do it. I can't keep my hands off you. It's so boring. It's so stupid and boring. And now we'll just brood about the fact that we can't touch each other. Who cares? You can do other stuff. You have magic. use it. But no, instead we get Aura randomly deciding that she's gonna light a whole town on fire. Professor Grady is now out of the way. The entire place goes up in flames, even though it's supposed to be a dragon-proof city. And we're suddenly shocked that Theophany set up another trap. Like, what do you mean? Anyways, did y'all have a good time? Me too. Thanks so much for watching. Leave your comments and questions down below. I'm sure you have plenty of questions. We all know I did. Let me know what you think is going to happen with the dragons. If you haven't read it already, don't spoil it for anybody unless you caption your comment with spoiler warning. But let me know where you think at this point, those of you who have not read this, where you think the stuff with the rainbow dragons is going to go. And as always, since this is one of my dragon book review videos, leave a dragon down below in the comments, a dragon emoji. Thank you so much for watching. Comments and questions down below. I'll see you for part 2. Bye. And before I go, I have to say thank you for being a friend to my Therapy Bills patrons, and those are Alexander, Andy Mation, Ashley H, Astra, Barry B, Call Me Kodiak, Choco's Homesick for Taiwan, DJ Rocktopus, Ellie, Emerald Dodge, Eric D, Jade L, John E, K, Kaleno K, Katie Ann, Quinn, Lady Kittybug, Lady Chips, Lemon Jelly. Y'all put food in your name, and I'm always doing this at lunchtime and I always get hungry. Lex, Other Lex, Lily, Mataraptor, Megwin Rose, Melissa, Minby, Mixer Boneless, Alice, Peggy Lou, Rain, Reese, SJ, Scarlet, Samar, SMK, Spoopy, Steph B, 3 raccoons in a trench coat, Tori, Urchin Audrey, White Raven 13, and Zorvictia. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend. And last but not least, I also have to say a big thank you to my Potato Search Marxist patrons, and those are Adrian, Aaron, Alejandra, Alicia's Last Frayed Nerve, Althea, Amanda D, Angelica, Artie the Ninth, Ava, Bari the Witch, Beck, Blythe Lavender, Bookish by Jenna, Bookish Rabbit, Bree, Bridget G. Collins, Kate B, Caitlin, Carlin, Carly, Casper, Kate, Kathy, Celeste, Claire Online, Cole, Colleen, Corwin, Courtney, Darius, Danielle, Danita, Darren, Desiree Michelle, DILF Enthusiast, Silco Apologist Era. Good shit. Dorian, Dorothea supports public education. Hell yeah. Draco-chan, Drive-By Thinker, Ebby, Emily A, Emma, Aaron with 2 E's, Aaron Starlight, Fiona, Gadarn, Halia Artisan, Hannah C, Helen, Harising, JM Tennant, Jay is on Olympus, Jelly V, Jen Michelle, Genderqueer, Jenny G, Jessa Sue, Jill, Jojo Bookish, Juicy Wizard, Kai Brecker has not read 6 of Crows, Caitlin, Catherine, Katie L, Katrina, Kaylee, Kayala, Kendra, KMTV, Kayana, Laughing Cat Dog, Laura is Angry, Lauren G, Lazarus Ray, Lindsay M, Lisa B, Lisa L, LP, Lou Siri, Lustful Octopus, Martin, Macy Jane, Maddie, Madison, Man-Eating Plant, Mary, Megan, Malara, May, Morgan, Myth Lesbian, Never, Nicole G, Nicole R, Paige P, Paul, Penelope, Penny Shilling, Foxglove, Plague Carrier, Queen Cereal, Rachel B, Reba, Rebecca R, Rhea, Ronnie, Rosie Thorns, Sikoria, Saintbringer, Sakyalume, Sarah H, Sarah the Bear, Shamed, Shannon, Sheen Onion, Sean, Sophie, Stardust, T Delegati, Talia, That Nerdy Mystic, That One Cute Chick, This Is Not a Trap, Tiana, Too Thick to Work Today. Oh my gosh, I forget how unhinged it gets at the end. Triple M, Tito Phoenix, Unicorn Jenny, Waves, Wobbs, Writer A, and last but not least, Zayden's award-winning Eggplant. Thank you all so much for being here and for being a friend.